Good boy, Bingo. Hi, friends. Just sitting here recalling a great interview I had yesterday with Mr. Steve Berg. He's a Hollywood character actor, a writer, comedian, and perhaps most relevantly for our purposes, he's an aficionado of all things strange. Steve has a great podcast called
Strangeness.
Hi, Strangeness. On his show, he's interviewed countless authors. Well, you could count them. I didn't count them. There were too many. And other aficionados of weird phenomena. We had a great conversation. It lasted about 2 hours, and I just enjoyed it so much. Maybe you will too. The video, for some reason, didn't start until about 30 seconds into our discussion, but you'll see me having just sat down and Steve's complimenting me on my Sitting Bull t-shirt. Here you go.
My dad was big team Indian, so like he's like the Cowboys suck. They shoot you in the back. I'm like, okay, sounds good.
Yeah, they always just had much more appeal to me. Like that was
right.
That was always the kind of life that was more attractive to me. Just kind of the what's this whole career thing? No, let me live the nomadic life. And
we've been lied to, man. We've been lied to. It's working 60 hours a week and enjoying 5 minutes of your life, then you're dead. It's what a racket we all signed up for.
Praise the Lord. Hey, man, that's the type of preaching that resonates with me. Embarrassingly, depending on who I'm around, right? Like these aren't conversations I can have with everybody in my family, even. But
yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you.
It's easy for you because you're like a working actor. You have this amazing film and TV credit.
Thank you.
Let me just introduce you really quick. So,
sure.
And thank you so much, Steve, for coming on my little show, the Outskirts podcast, right? So, Steve Berg, you are like an amazing actor, comedian, writer.
Thank you.
There's this synchronistic twist here.
Ooh.
Let me figure out how to do the screen share.
Yeah.
What happens if I press this button? Nothing. All right. I think I shared the wrong screen.
Great houseplant you have.
Thank you so much.
What is that?
So my wife calls it a fiddle leaf fig tree.
Beautiful.
But I thought it was a ficus.
Yeah.
I'm not.
My wife's super paranoid about indoor houseplants because like we have 2 cats, and I guess like the majority of them are toxic to cats. So there's only like a handful you can actually find.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know that, but my wife's like super like on top of it. I'm not.
Yeah. Wow.
I wouldn't have known that.
It would never even occur to me to like wonder if my
No.
plants could be harming. We have a dog, and a tarantula. Maybe that's what's wrong with the tarantula. He just stays in his hole. So can you see my screen that I'm sharing at all?
I can. I can see it looks like an IMDb page. But
yeah.
I'm kind of blind though.
Okay, yeah, that I don't know. I'm really horrible. I should be better at this. But yeah, it's like all these you're like starring in a lot of shows and movies here.
Not necessarily starring. I'm more of the character actor guy,
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah. So what is a character actor? Is that where you're the same kind of the same guy from movie to movie, or is that where you change?
No, it's kind of where you change. Like a leading man typically is like, like let's say you're hiring Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt's going to be a certain way in every movie because he's the leading man and that's what you're hiring for. But a character actor, like you will, I think like in my 20s and 30s, like my real like bread and butter was playing like best friend stoner.
Right.
Stoner best buddy. So that was kind of my niche. But I was always like, bopping around. I could play like a frat boy, a guy running like a convenience store in New Jersey. Like a character actor is kind of it's what I always wanted to be, because like you tend to have longer careers, like because like I will bop in for 3 scenes in a movie and then I'm out. Nothing's riding on my shoulders, or the pressure isn't too great to where
Yeah.
the movie is going to live or die. Hopefully, my goal as a creative director is to make some scenes better and elevate the stars, the 2 or 3 stars of the thing.
Well, I can definitely see how you could do that. I've just enjoyed listening to your podcast so much. I can tell by the way you interact with people. You're just a great guy.
Oh, thanks,
I would
man.
definitely cast you in anything I was doing. But
Thank you.
the most recent film, it looks like, is called Snack Shack.
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody cares, but like I've had this 5 years long dream of bringing a snack shack to my local pool, right?
Dude, then this movie will resonate with you.
Yeah. My kids and I, like, we even worked up a menu and everything, and we invented
That's
the
awesome.
special tea. And yeah, it was after we started, I reached out to you and I was like, Snack Shack. I knew that the movie was out there and I've been meaning to watch it. And then I saw, you're in it. I was like, wow, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm not in it like a ton, like a whole the movie ended up like it was a super long script, and the movie was, I think, like it was just they shot too much movie and they need to get down to like 2 hours. So like a whole section of the movie is gone, but I'm still in the movie. But I will say this, it is a great movie. Like, I don't say that about everything I've done, but this movie is like legit good, I thought.
It has to be, right? I mean,
yeah, it's good.
Snack Shack.
It's a strong performance. It's like when I read the script, I was like, it was one of those times where I'm like, oh my God, I really wish I wrote that.
So you play someone's dad in the film?
I do. I play like a stern dad of one of the main kids, and like a '90s dad wearing Dockers and stuff. So I could kind of go back to my childhood and think about my friends' dads, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna. I know I'm gonna be playing Aaron Johnson's dad.
Oh, that's
my
awesome.
friends. So yeah,
that's funny. Well, yeah. Anyway, congratulations on your career here. That's so awesome. But we are here to talk about Strangeness.
Yeah,
That's kind of that's the theme of my interest here lately.
Good.
So now, can you see I've pulled up?
I can. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm recording this. Hopefully, it'll be I don't know what we'll be able to see on the video that is cut and put on YouTube, but this is like my 3rd video I've done for YouTube. It's just been strictly audio for the most part before now.
Yeah, I'm about to start messing with video too. Why not? You gotta mix it up.
Yeah, I think maybe you have a broader reach on YouTube. I think
I think that's what people tell me. Yeah, honestly, it's been like, as you know, you start a podcast and then you're like, it'll just be easy. I hit record, then bing, bang, boom. But then you're like, oh no, it's actually like a lot of work. At least I put in a lot of work because I like research every guest, read their books if they have them, and then edit. And I do minimal editing, like the most basically sound mixing. But I'm not technically inclined. All this takes me a long time. It's a lot of work, but I love it. I love it so much.
That's a perfect segue into what I want to talk about. So you have such an amazing breadth of knowledge when it comes to high strangeness. Like the interviews you do, you're always engaging with these authors and whoever it might be. Right. And every time you come to the table with a deep knowledge, like it's like, yeah, I've been looking into this since I was 12 years old. I'm just really impressed with the level of knowledge you have. For me, it's kind of a newer delving into, and I don't do a lot of research, but on my show, I have done a lot of editing. So I just let people talk, and then I'll come in and do like sound effects or depending on the format. This is more of this portion of our discussion is more of an interview type. Yeah. But you are going to tell a scary story for us.
Absolutely.
Rad. Yeah. Okay, so I might get to play with that. And do some sound effects and stuff. But I just wanted to ask you a few questions about weirdness and high strangeness.
Absolutely. I love talking about it. Let's do it.
Okay. So it always baffles me when I engage people just, at Starbucks or at Kroger, and I'll just, I just like, hey, do you have any ghost stories? I'm putting together this thing. And they're like, I'd say about 50% of them are just like appalled that I'm even considering such things. And then the other half is like, no, but I wish I did. And then, maybe 1 in 10 will have something that they'll share with me.
Right.
And it'll be a great story. Like I was going through this Vietnamese coffee drive-through, so I'm in the Houston area, and I just randomly asked the girl, I was like, "Thanks, you got any ghost stories?" And she was like, "No, but my grandmother was in Mexico and she was walking up a mountain and saw a woman turn into a chicken."
Oh,
You know what I mean? That's like that deep brujeria stuff. Like,
yeah, that's good stuff right there.
Yeah. And then I was in Lubbock earlier this summer and I stopped in Allsup's. So Allsup's is like a West Texas gas station chain that's famous for bean burritos. So like anytime so you know about, so here, like in East Texas and South Texas, you've got Buc-ee's and it's like the super Walmart of gas stations.
They're giant.
You get West and then it's like Allsup's. It's just very quaint and yummy burritos, right? So I asked the guy, well, first I make my way through the employees, right? Walk in and like, here's my burrito. You guys got any ghost stories? And the girls are like, no. Are you some kind of weirdo? No. And then the guy comes from behind and they were like, well, maybe ask him. And he's like, well, there was something. And then it just turned into this string. He's had this life, this full life of supernatural experiences, And I'm like, yes,
It's awesome.
I give him my number. This is always what happens. I give them my information and then I never hear back from them.
Right.
So
Don't be discouraged by that because, like I have come across the same thing where I try to do, I'm like, great story. Can we follow up sometime? Because like, for instance, I'm at a drive-through, you're working, we can't talk forever, but can we follow up? It is rare that people are going to take the time to put their story into an email. But if you keep on trying, you'll get it. You will. Some people will.
I keep persisting. There's this one guy at my local grocery store. I hit him up last year. He told me this weird story about like going up into an attic space above one of these grocery stores. And it was just like, it turned into like this other dimension thing where he was like,
that's awesome.
It was like, just kept going on and on and on. And it was all clean. And then he came back the next day and it was like a tiny attic full of dust and cobwebs. Just crazy stuff.
Did you say it was an attic above a grocery store?
Yes, like a storage space. So it's a determined amount of square footage, right? And he told me this story, people will talk to you, but then, so that was last year. And I saw him again this year because he's kind of like on the circuit. So he goes from store to store. And I was like, man, I remember your story from last year. I recounted it. And he was like, yeah. He was like, I'm going to tell it this year, so fingers crossed on that one, but I don't know.
I will tell you, well, I think that's a very interesting phenomenon because there is that is something that there are stories about people entering a space and the space is totally different, or it's you enter like a small room and then all of a sudden the room is vast and giant. And also with the UFO cases going back into history over 80 years, there is many instances where people will get into a small saucer and then it will be this vast, like, room or like building. And they're like, wait, what? So you kind of wonder sometimes if like these spaces can be almost like, I mean, like, I'm not saying I believe this. I don't have a belief system in any of this stuff, right? But we're spitballing and speculating, but like,
yeah,
wonder sometimes if UFOs or these rooms are used as some kind of portal to another world. Like, because I mean, like the UFO, definitely the size of these crafts do not describe what people are describing. And like that room thing, like you said, it was a different room. That is a phenomenon that people report. It's really weird and awesome.
The only space I had for it was the Harry Potter tent, where you go inside and it's like,
right?
You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know.
Okay, well, Harry Potter, they pitch a tent and they go on, and it's like bigger than my house. But yeah,
it's interesting.
It is interesting. But yeah, I'm having some trouble getting people. I don't know if they're just reluctant to tell their stories because they fear being judged or what, but there are great stories just in your community,
There are, and I tell you what, I've had the most, like, I guess, luck, because like you, I usually any kind of like party or gathering where people's hair's let down, I feel like when you approach them, if they're at work, they're like, oh, is my boss gonna see that I'm a weirdo and stuff? But like if I'm at a party, people got a couple libations in them, I find my hit rate is so much higher. But because what people will say is like, I'll go up to, a young lady and be like, hey, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh, you're friends of my friend. I'm like, oh, crazy question, but have you ever experienced, something paranormal or strange and unusual? And they'll be like, Not really. Well, actually, there was this one time where a full body apparition walked down my living room stairs. I'm like, whoa, okay. So
That's right. See, that's the problem. So I think this is coming up on my 3rd annual Halloween series. So I kind of depleted all of my friends and friends of friends and relatives on that first season. But
right.
let me show you something, okay? So that first season I did, we had like a distant cousin who had this photo, a ghost photo, and she has the story where she went to a party in college, like a backyard kegger,
Right.
and it was in this house that they all lived in. The girls lived there. They knew it was haunted by this girl with blonde hair. Can you see this?
I can.
Okay. So if you look, the faces are blurred, and you look over the left shoulder of the girl with the overalls. Can you see that?
I can see.
I'm
Oh,
gonna zoom in on it. So
oh my God, that's absolutely terrifying.
isn't it? I know. I just dug that out of my Amazon photo storage. I haven't looked at it. It's super scary.
That is really, really. You know what it looks like? It looks like Robert Blake's character in Lost Highway, David Lynch's film. That is like really scary. That's a great picture. Wow, I love it. Thank you.
That's a story. Christy, she's one of my wife's cousins. Fantastic storyteller.
Dang.
In Pennsylvania. So that, I don't know. I'm thinking that's something.
That's terrifying. No matter how any way you slice it.
Yeah. So what was it that you think first attracted you to like the world of high strangeness? Do you remember like your first exposure?
You know, it's one of these things where like, okay, so I truly don't remember a time being alive where I really wasn't super into this stuff, if I'm being honest. Like my mom likes to tell a story of like she was a school teacher and was a big reading advocate. So when I was around 5, she took me to the local library, got me my little, library card. She's like, go pick out a couple books. I'm like, great. And I don't remember this, but she said I came back with like a picture book about UFOs and a book about like doing magic tricks. And she's just like, you were just always into strange and unusual things. And even goes beyond, like, I'm really into like outsider art and like weird music. And I like things on the margins, things that aren't in the mainstream. I like unpredictable chord progressions in music. And so I've just always been wired for the weird. And I truly don't know why. I kind of have some like theories, maybe like I grew up in a house with like absolutely zero religion or spirituality. And so maybe I think perhaps this was like my version of some kind of other. Maybe I don't know. Like I'm not saying that's the case, but like that's the only kind of like theory I have behind it. But yeah,
That
I
makes
don't
sense.
it's weird. It's one of those things. I think when I was like 12, 13, 14, I was like, oh, I'm gonna grow out of this eventually and become an adult and be interested in other things like golf and blah blah blah. And it's weird. It's only like intensified to like now I'm at the point where I'm like going out into cornfields with people who have witnessed Bigfoot, at 7 a.m. and looking for weird stuff, man. And like, it's doing a podcast about it. And I think with my acting career, it was always one of those things I kind of kept quiet because I didn't want people to think like, oh, let's not hire the UFO weirdo guy. Like I was kind of scared that people would think I was a lunatic. So
What's
now
more?
I don't care. When you get
Yeah.
older, you stop caring what people think, and then I realized like actually no one cares
Yeah.
like what you're into. So
What's more interesting to talk about, right? Like if I'm
I
gonna
agree.
have a conversation with a stranger, I mean, they're good icebreakers, right? The weird
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So I was in the woods and I heard this like knocking sound, and it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I got, just what's more interesting to talk about?
I agree. Well, it's really like the high strangeness, which is kind of the term I use to encompass all this strange and unusual stuff. It's more than just talking about the phenomenon, like the actual Bigfoot creature or the UFO or the ghost. It's kind of an entree into talking about the nature of reality and the meaning of life. And it's really like this when I get together with some of my colleagues in the weird world, we end up talking about philosophy and like deep meanings of things and the nature of reality around us. Almost more so than the actual phenomenon itself because if you're doing it right, like let's say I think like if you want to get into UFOs, well, the first couple of years you'll spend really like deep diving the UFO thing. You'll read the right books, watch some documentaries, but on year 3, you'll be reading books about Arabian mystics from 5,000 years ago because it's all related. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it leads you down some interesting paths, and also makes you very well read because you just have to read books if you're interested in this stuff, because that's where the information is. It's not, you're not going to find it on Google. I promise you.
That's my problem. So I'm consuming everything, through the ear gate, and I should be
That's
reading
fine
more.
too.
I have 3 kids, and it's like at any given time I'm going to some practice, or I've got like COVID and a half, and I'm just like,
I know.
there's reading is hard for me, so I'm just listening to everything I can.
It is. Well, audiobooks too. I will tell you, like Audible has a lot of really good UFO and like weird books now. Like it used to not be that the case where it's like, oh, there was none of the good stuff was on audiobook, but now a lot of it is. So
yeah, I found some things on Audible. Mainly I do podcasting. I consume podcasts because you can really, there's somebody talking about the thing you want to hear about generally.
Right. Or a guest you want to listen to. Yeah.
Right.
I hear you.
Yeah.
No, it's wonderful. I listen to a ton of podcasts myself.
That's funny. I had this hypothetical scenario. You mentioned standing in a cornfield looking for Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So what did I write down over here? Oh yeah. So let's say you're driving by a cornfield. It's 3 a.m. at night, right? I guess I chose cornfield because you're from Nebraska, but that's probably not the case. They don't have cornfields everywhere. But
no, but we got our fair share, man.
Okay, yeah. I did high school in Illinois, lots of corn there too. So you're driving by the cornfield, 3 a.m., and you right there, just maybe a yard out from the corn, you see your doppelganger. Do you stop?
Yes.
Do you confront him?
Absolutely.
Do you? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to, because like otherwise I would like it would consume my life. Like, wait, what was that? What did it mean? Was I hallucinating? Like, it's always one of those things where I think I would stop, but given putting myself in the moment, it's pitch black, 3 a.m. cornfield. Maybe I just keep driving. Like maybe I'm not that brave, but I'd like to think I would stop and confront this. Like, what's the deal, man? Like, where are you, me?
I think that's probably the difference, right? So there are people who would just be like, no, I don't want to know. I need to just, what's for lunch?
Yeah.
And then, which also is an important question, but some people, they don't want to know, right? They don't want to be confronted with the possibility. They don't want their worldview to be shattered or, added depth to it. But yeah, I'm stopping also. Yeah.
Because maybe we could work together, like maybe my doppelganger could do the things I don't want to do in life. Like, you go work, you audition for this thing while I'm like, playing video games. That'd be great.
Yeah. Truthfully, from where I'm at right now, I would highly suspect that it's some kind of negative entity. That's just that's what's been kind of ingrained in me. And that's kind of, and that's not just religious indoctrination. That's also like life experience and like my exposure to weird has been scary thus far.
Okay.
Yeah. That could have mostly to do with me, our reaction to these things, but
yeah, it's hard. It's really hard to know because 2 people will see the same things and have 2 completely different emotional reactions. So I think there is, honestly, if I'm being honest, I think there is a co-creative aspect to this stuff where whatever you're going to see may be conforming to your either personal belief system, your cultural upbringing. I think that stuff is in play. I really do. And these aren't my ideas. These, the great Jacques Vallée or John Keel said there is a and even Carl Jung, the wonderful psychoanalyst psychologist, he thought there was a co-creative aspect to it too, where it's going to take it's going to pull from the sea of archetypes that are familiar to you at this current like cultural level. If that makes sense. Do you know what I'm saying?
It does make sense. Yeah. So now we're delving into that philosophical, like,
yeah.
But my mind just went to somewhere much different. Randonautica. Are you familiar with this app?
I am. Yeah.
And how it works. So it's like the intention and then it just unfolds before you, right? So your participation in the magic is intention.
Yes.
And also a willingness to follow the rabbit or whatever, right?
Yeah. And that is exactly what I'm talking about. There is a co-creative. I don't like, and this is, I have no evidence to back this up. I mean, zero evidence, but this is my own philosophy where I tend to think if there's no one to witness a UFO, the UFO is not there. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think it needs us to materialize. I don't have any proof, but these are just some of the ideas I'm excited about. Like in a month, I may have a totally different take on it. But and that's the thing. I don't have a fixed belief system on any of this stuff because once you're kind of settled into like, oh, UFOs represent aliens from another planet or they're interdimensional, whatever that means. I think you kind of stop learning. It's like I really think especially with the paranormal and high strange because no one knows the answer to any of it. And I kind of think no one ever will. I think it's the mystery is the point. But when I hear people who have this certitude about a certain aspect of it, I'm usually like, well, it's interesting, good for you. And I kind of slowly back away. I'm like, they don't know. They can say my opinion, my ideas of this stuff are X, Y, Z. But when there are a lot of people out there who will say like, this is what UFOs are. This is what they represent. Case closed. Buy my book. And I'm like, that is no. There's no way.
Right.
They don't know. They don't know.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm there with you 100%. If a UFO appears in the sky and no one's there to see it, did it really happen?
That's exactly it.
It's like, where did that maxim about the tree in the woods come from?
I don't know.
This is a better one.
Yeah. Well, it works. The thing with these are old philosophical tropes. Like I remember the first time I loved in college, I took a bunch of philosophy classes that weren't like, didn't go to my major. They're a total waste of money, but like I learned a lot. But there's this great kind of example. I remember day one of this class, the professor was like, if you take an old battleship or like an old sunken ship, it gets beached onto shore. And then you take that ship apart, board by board, nail by nail, and move it over 10 feet, rebuild it perfectly. Is it the same ship? And, like there is no answer. Like, is it? I mean, it's different because it's in a different space and it was rebuilt, but it looks, acts, smells the same. These are questions like we can't answer for sure. And I think they're important when you're thinking about the paranormal.
I like that. I understand the adaptation there.
Mm-hmm.
There's something implied on the subatomic level that
yeah.
Is matter is this the ship?
Right.
It's composed of the same stuff basically.
It has the same qualities, but it occupies a different space. So is it the same? Yeah.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Am I still sharing the screen?
Uh-huh.
All right, I'm gonna stop that. Well, yeah. So we've featured. So this is kind of like the splash page for the Buzzsprout, that's also what I use. Here's mine.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
beautiful.
That's the host site. And then let me just stop share. Are we back full screen now?
We're back, buddy.
All right, cool. Let's see. Yeah, I was going to ask you kind of a personal question.
Go for it.
But it has to do with what I perceive as your enthusiasm
mm-hmm.
for this topic. I mean, it's an assumption I made, but
yep.
I'm excited about all things supernatural and paranormal and strange also. And you have this kind of boyish enthusiasm that I recognize and it resonates with me. And I wondered, as I first started delving into your back catalog, so I wonder if he believes, is he a believer? And then the question starts to emerge. Okay, he has so much knowledge about magical practice.
Mm-hmm.
Is he a practitioner? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard you pose that question to Richard Metzger.
Yeah.
And I was astounded by how enthusiastically he answered yes. He was like, "Oh no, yes, most definitely. I've been doing magic for a long time."
Yeah.
And so I still don't have my head around what all that could entail as far as what does it mean to do magic. But
right.
Can I ask that of you? Do you do magic?
Sure. Okay. Well, like I think we all do, right? First up, I'm going to give like the boring answer, but like A magic, like there is like magic how we all perceive it. Like some people will say like, oh, he performs magic. He wears a hood, rituals, and like drinks blood out of a goblet. You know, kind of the satanic panic, like fear-based magic. That's all BS. I mean, I'm sure maybe there's people doing that, but like that's not the magic I'm speaking of. Now there is a form called sigil magic, chaos magic, I guess you would, where you make a sigil, put an intention behind it, burn it, send it off into the ether. It's kind of a lovely little personal practice. I've tried that like 2 or 3 times, but I'm just too lazy. I'm very interested in magic and the history of like, magical groups like the OTO and the Golden Dawn and stuff like that. But I'm not really a practice magical practicer. But I have friends who are, and I think it's lovely for them. It's just not something I meditate, so that maybe that is kind of a magical practice to me. But like one of my friends, John Tenney, I'm not sure if you've heard of him. He's a pretty big name in the paranormal community, but he talks about his magical practice, and it's making his bed. As he's making his bed, he noticed he's flapping his arms around and doing like these like motions. And he does this magical practice every morning where he thanks his ancestors. For the ones who were bad, he says, I'm going to do better. And for the ones that were good, I'm going to make you proud. And he's like, that's my magical practice. And so a magical practice can be something like almost like a routine. Like even like, people say like, oh, I'm not superstitious, but people, I mean, the person who says they're not superstitious still isn't going to walk under a ladder. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like superstition and magic is so powerful in society that every office building in America doesn't have a 13th floor.
Isn't that something?
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
It's because it's superstition. So
Yeah.
architects are weaving superstition and magic into their plans when they're creating a building. Like this stuff is very present in society. Even think about a football game. Well, how do they start a football game? They all meet in the middle. They flip a coin. That is a magical ritual. They start before every athletic event. They do the same thing. It's everyone knows what the drill is. You stand in a certain way. You wait for the coin to be tossed. You call your thing. I mean, like, it's ritual and magic is all over the place if you really stop and look at it. It doesn't have to be people in the robes saying, oh, blah, 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 blah. That's how we think about it because of media and movies and film and TV and books. But magic is everywhere, man. Like we're performing magic by communicating, talking about this stuff in a certain degree.
I love the ritual aspect of life where it's intentionally designed and engaged for the purpose of beauty, right?
Yeah.
Like I think of the Catholic, I'm not Catholic, but I've attended mass like on Christmas Eve,
Sure.
different times in my life. Just the ritual aspect of it is so beautiful to me, and the communal singing and the incense
Totally.
and the, just the people acting in unison with one mind.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And I am not a religious person myself, but I about 2 years ago I went to this wonderful conference in Nashville called the Strange Realities Conference. And Ren Collier, who is a wonderful, probably my favorite person who talks about magic. He's young, but he's got such a great grasp on the history and kind of what's going on now. But he led so I shouldn't say I've never done magic like in a ritual thing. He did lead us through a ritual where there was 12 of us on stage. It was live streamed and it was beautiful. And I have been to synagogues, I have been to Eastern like Buddhist temples, I've been to Catholic churches. They're all doing the same thing. It's all ritualistic. Take the body of Christ, drink the wine. I mean, this is the same. It's very different. It's very, very similar. A lot of this stuff. It's just the meaning you put behind it, I guess.
I think there must be an innate desire in most humans or many humans to participate in that type of ritual. We're drawn to that. And then the notion of intent, or you could call it faith, maybe, where you're placing your will in this body of action and belief. I'm really longing for that. I want to engage in some type of regular ritual like that, but there's also so much else that's kind of hemmed in with a lot of these practices. I just can't I haven't found one that I'm totally comfortable with.
Yeah, yeah. Neither have I, but I also don't feel like I need it. Like I kind of get that communal thing. I go to quite a few of these conferences, like I'll speak at some or just attend some for the pure joy of it. But I get that kind of like group camaraderie. Even if it could just be like at the end of the day, we're having a couple of beers sitting outside on the back patio of a Marriott, and we're having beers, talking about stuff like this. It feels ritualistic to me, and it feels like we're performing magic just by talking about this stuff. So it kind of scratches that itch for me personally, I guess. I highly recommend people going to, even if it's just a small town thing where it's like a group of ghost hunters is going to give a lecture. Like it may not be exactly what you're interested in, but you are going to meet interesting people who are interested in the same thing. And a lot of these conferences, even the tiniest ones in little small towns, you'll meet fellow weirdos who, if you were talking about how you want to get stories. If you want to get stories, go to one of these things and be willing to talk to people, be willing to hang out, get a hotel room right by the thing and say, look, I'm going on a business trip for 24 hours and
Yeah.
collect stories. And I'm telling you, you'll come back with more than you ever dreamed of. I promise you.
Jacques Vallée actually gave us some kind of seminar at Rice University here.
Yeah, the authors of the impossible. I almost came to it.
I should have gone.
You should. They're gonna do more. You
Yeah.
have to go. I mean, like I can't imagine a better one, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, I gotta find out when that's coming back around. Let me ask you about music. Do you play an instrument?
I do. I play. I play guitar.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to start a band like
Yeah.
UFOs? Let's be. Can we do that? That's another thing I ask almost as many people. Would you like to join a band with me?
Yeah. I don't play well. I play like a lot of like I'm really into psych rock, so it's a lot of like I love like 3 chords being played the exact same way for 7 minutes with some weird like noodling and sitar sound effects and stuff. Everything needs to be weird for me these days.
you turned me on to 2 bands that I thought were awesome. Jonestown.
Oh, the Brian Jonestown Massacre.
Yeah. So I heard you talking about them. I was like, let me look. They were amazing. I listened to like just the first 5 tracks, and then there was another one that I really liked, and I keep forgetting to like add it to my playlist. Who's your other favorite band?
Oh, I mean, I have a lot. I was Pavement. The band Pavement was a huge influence.
I'm all over
up.
Pavement. Yeah,
they changed my life in the '90s, and I still listen to them a lot, obviously today, and the works of Steve Malkmus. But the Silver Jews are one of my favorite bands of all time.
I don't know them. Okay.
Guided by Voices.
That's the one. About. That's the one I looked up, and I was like, because I'd heard them, but I'd never listened to any of theirs. I've heard of them. And I was like, wow, I really like this. So yeah,
they're so good. Yeah. Oh yeah, man, totally. I'm always willing to spread the news on Guided by Voices, man.
So let's start a band. I have a band name ideas. Did you listen to Coast in the early 2000s?
Oh, I still do to go to sleep. I listen to old Art Bell as I fall asleep.
Me too. I got that podcast. So you remember UFO Phil?
God, I can't. Was that Art Bell era?
It was actually George Norrie, but
yeah, I kind of fell off when George Norrie took over. To be honest.
Well, that's too bad because I really wanted to sing the song. I'll do it anyway. He was like,
yeah, do it.
UFO Phil. It was like the intro. They come back from the break and they play the music. Yeah. And UFO Phil was like this. I don't know how they found him, but never mind. I'll just put the track in on the.
Wait, is it this one? I turned on my radio
yes.
in the middle of the night. Yes.
I saw things I need to know. I can see the light.
Yes.
I also see a ghost.
Because you're listening to Coast. Yeah. Okay. It's funny because like I didn't listen to much George Norrie, but I remember that song. Like, that's funny. Yeah. It's a good one.
I'll never forget it. Yeah. Well, I never knew that my mom was a Martian.
Yeah.
So hilarious. Well, how would you feel about making that kind of music? Maybe just, a little more rocked up.
That exact song is probably not the tone of music I would go for. I think it's an adorable song.
Yeah.
But
theme-wise, I just mean theme-wise.
Yeah, no, thematically, I'm loving where it's going. Musically, I'd probably take it in a different direction. But yeah. Theme-wise, I'm all over it.
All right. Well, when can we have our first band practice? We'll text about that later, maybe.
Yeah. We'll do that off air.
We can do a virtual practice, though, right?
There you go.
All right. I'm looking forward to it. What do you think about the title for or the band name? UFO Phils? UFO Phils?
Maybe UFO.
That's
like
better.
OHOH, like it's it's cute, it's fun.
UFO. That's
Yeah,
better. Yeah.
yeah,
We can have a song named after Phil.
yeah, exactly. We'll name drop them,
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we were talking about music. I wanted to ask you about music and magic.
please. Oh, I love it.
Forever, basically, there have been songs that I'm drawn to in the same way that I've been drawn to the darkness or the weirdness, or there are songs that
Mm-hmm.
they resonate with me on a different level.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like intuitively, I know beyond lyrics, there's something happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll years will pass and I'll look into it and I'll look into the band and I'll be like, oh, these guys are into the occult
Right.
or whatever. And it's like, that's probably why I felt what I felt, you know?
Yep.
Do you think that's a thing?
Here's what I think. I think like for thousands of years, ancient man has been using drums and percussion and music for rituals, to as almost a way to have the mind traverse other realities. Music is a portal type thing where I mean, like, for instance, like, I never saw the original Grateful Dead with, Jerry, but I did see, Dead and Company early on when they were first touring. And I'm not like a huge, like, I don't really care for John Mayer that much, but he's great at playing Jerry Garcia's music. And during one, they were playing the song Terrapin Station, which I really love. And there was a moment in the song where I was like, the rest of the world is like melted away around, and I'm in this completely other space. I've had that multiple times singing live music where I'm so into the show that like reality feels non-reality ish to me. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of such a personal thing, but I do feel like there is a magical thing happening. And it's probably just my serotonin levels boosting, adrenaline, like, it could totally be explained with biology, I'm sure. It feels magical to me though, and you can't convince me otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had that experience at certain live shows. Most recently, Band of Horses.
Oh yeah.
Just the way that the beauty of it and the way that the sounds wash over you and you're laying on the lawn and it's night and
yeah,
it feels like you're bathing in relaxation and your endorphins are firing. You're just like, could not get any better. And that's without any drugs, right?
Right. Well, I mean, the music is such a primal thing, and like geneticists do know now, like it's been proven that like trauma is imprinted on our DNA. So if your great grandparents were and a lot of ours were, like went through a traumatic experience like starvation, some of that trauma, and it may not totally like affect your life generations later, but there is an effect. Like trauma is imprinted on DNA. So what else is imprinted on DNA? And it might be this need and love for music. Like, something that really bothers me in this current era is how artists are treated, and especially musicians. Like, I have a lot of friends just living in LA for 20 years who are musicians of bands you have heard of. They make less than a school teacher. Like, they're touring 300 days a year because now they used to all make money off album sales. Now it's all Spotify, so they make zero money. These people are hand to mouth. Yet what they're giving us is so important. And I feel like we can't treat our artists like this because eventually they're going to stop making art. And where will we be then? Without art, I think humanity is dead in the water. It really is. I think we'd start fighting each other. The world will be nuked in 2 seconds without art. Art is what soothes the savage beast. I do believe that. And when you start pulling art out of schools, guess what? They always find test scores go down. There's more violence. There's kids dropping out. Art is inextricably linked to a good and happy human life. That is my belief. So
I believe that 100%. Yeah. Yeah. I'd hate to live in a world with just, not that you can't make art out of numbers, but just numbers.
Yeah, right.
You spend all day just living in a solved world
Absolutely.
where everything is measured in a sum and it's done. And
well, if you think about a lot of the things that are beautiful in life are being eroded, like nature is being eroded by climate change. Art has never been, while it's appreciated by us, the corporations have zero respect for artists. I mean, they're like, yeah, you had 1 million downloads on your song, and here's $13. And that's
insane.
literally what the
Yeah.
figures are. I mean, I'm not even joking. It is like they're being paid nothing on these sites, and like it bothers me. I still buy physical media. Like I always buy the LP of the bands I really love, because I'm, as a person who's made his living in the arts and media as well, it's like that's just the right thing to do. If you enjoy the album, purchase it, because man, they need the money like bad.
Yeah. I honestly, I haven't spent enough time contemplating that. That's horrible. I mean,
Yeah, it's very
that's
sad.
not
And,
it. Yeah. Wealth accumulates in all the wrong places.
you couldn't have said it better.
That's just our opinion, I guess.
Well, I mean,
don't know,
like I feel like it's a popular opinion. I feel like
Yeah.
most people who aren't part of the, in the corporate boardroom of Spotify would probably feel the same way as us, like
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
most people want artists to be treated well, like I think most people have good intentions towards art, I mean, there may be artists you don't care for, and that's fine, but like everyone has like a favorite movie or a favorite-ish band or kind of music, and I think they would want the best for that.
It's really
If
a
not,
horrible picture when you think about it. So yeah, it's the corporate capture of art is what's happened.
it
So
is.
the artist is being totally unincentivized monetarily. It's amazing they're still making art, but they have to because that's who
You
they
have to.
are, I guess. But
Exactly.
you have these, squares stealing all the money.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true, and I think it's one of these things where we're basically telling kids and young burgeoning artists that what you're doing is not important. What you're
Yeah.
doing is not a viable career path. Where I feel the opposite. I think it should be a viable career path, and I think it's the most important thing. I think art and humans are linked, and without art, I don't think we have humans. I think we'll just go away. What's the point?
You're an inspiration. Like
Oh.
just looking at your your resume and just hearing all that you've done. It's inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah, I should have pursued the arts, wholeheartedly as a means of sustaining myself. But I just
Yeah, well, let me tell you, it's also a tough and scary life. Like I'm now currently, like all the actors going through, like since the pandemic, the traditional Hollywood business, I guess, that I've made my living on is dying very fast. And there's definitely not as much. There's probably right now, there's probably 60% less work than there was 4 years ago.
really.
Yeah, I mean, like if you want some figures, like YouTube and TikTok have eclipsed movies and TV combined in terms of numbers of people watching, and how people get their media and their entertainment now is so vastly different from how you and I grew up. I'm guessing we're roughly the same age.
I'm
Like
45. Yeah.
I think we're the you and I think the generation below us is the tail end of TV and film consumers, and they're now starting to make vertical movies, which are just meant to be watched on your phone. They call them vertical films, and those are the hottest thing right now in LA. And so
They're full length. Are they like full length?
full length, and they're putting them on TikTok, and people will watch them in parts.
What?
And they're working. Sadly, it's going to work, and it's costing the studios way less money. So they're like, "This is great."
Just for reference, I can't even watch like a 2-minute vertical.
I can't either.
Like, so there's this guy I follow, Old Time Hockey. Are you aware of him? Check him out. There might be some magic taking place here. Basically, he's like in the Upper Peninsula, Michigan, and he just has these little recipes that he does in the cedar swamp, and he's like,
That's great.
He makes it and he says, "Here you go, buddy." Right?
Yeah.
But you can have the standard format or the phone version. And me and my kids, we watch them falling asleep every night. And it's
Right.
Like, I can't even watch the phone version.
No.
What'd you call it? The vertical version of
I hate it.
The 2-minute clip. Yeah.
I really do. Like, I don't even like. Someone's like, "Oh, dude, you gotta check this video out." A lot of times, I'll just watch it on my laptop. So it's like that's a little more. I can do the laptop, but phone, I don't want to watch anything more than 5 seconds on my phone.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I'm old school, I guess.
Yeah. Oh man. let me check my notes here.
Yeah, of course.
Might have been something else I wanted to ask you about.
Do you mind if I go to the bathroom really quick?
Please, yeah.
What's it?
Well, I never knew that my girlfriend was a Martian. Even while I sleep, there are Martians watching me. I turn on my radio in the middle of the night, and I learn things I need to know. Now I can see the light. You saw on it, and I also see a ghost. Classic UFO film. Man.
Okay, sorry about
I shouldn't have taken my headphones off. Every time I put them back on, and the audio later, it'll be like a 10% decrease in volume or increase. Like I got to figure out. I got 3 fingers from the mouth. Okay, hopefully that will. All right. and then I'll have a piece of slobber that just beats against.
Yeah, I know.
Why do I spit so much? So, is there anything that you've been looking into lately that's really piqued your interest as far as weirdness?
Oh God, yes, so much. Well, okay, I guess one thing I've been hot on for probably like 6 months now is roads. Like the roads you drive on, right? There is this long history, even going back before, we were talking about UFOs and Bigfoot and stuff, where in the fairy faith, like in the Celtic fairy faith and the Scottish fairy faith and in the Scandinavian fairy faith, fairies, trolls, and stuff were always like a lot of times seen on roads or by the road. And roads are a liminal thing, they're a means of travel. They're between two areas, right? This kind of liminality theme that people like to talk about, which I think there's definitely something to. But like even if you look at like the last 50 years, so many stories are a flying saucer landed in this road in the middle of nowhere where no one was there. A person happened to drive and see it. Bigfoot crossing the road, the lady in white seen by the road. There's something about there is a motif and patterns of high strangeness appearing by roadsides. So I've been very fascinating in trying to collect, and I mean, hundreds of stories now because I've had now people send me in like, oh, do you know about this? Like in Tuscany in 1957, this, but like it's you can just collect. And like I think the obvious logical thing would be like, well, people are traveling on roads, so of course that's when they're gonna see they're out and about. But it seems weirder than that when you really kind of peel it back, because like a lot of times these roads where these weird things are appearing on are truly in the middle of nowhere, like on a mountain road at 3 a.m. where no one's really driving, but they happen to come across a landed flying saucer with landing gear or a Bigfoot or a lady in white and many other manifestations of high strangeness. So I get really obsessed by the kind of like the fine details about this stuff. That's what I'm into nowadays, not so much about like what do UFOs mean and what does the government know. I don't care about that stuff. I'm kind of like really wanting to like deconstruct little aspects and motifs that keep on popping up, even because I kind of do see a lot of this stuff maybe being manifestations of the same thing, kind of like how John Keel or Jacques Vallée would think about it, where these maybe aren't separate things per se. It's like, because if you take the 60s and 70s, for example, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of different kinds of creatures walking off these flying saucers. I guess so. If you were thinking like, in the old way of thinking, it's like, well, there's just 900 different species of aliens visiting this planet. And I'm like, yeah, or these are projections that can manifest in a physical material way that are just showing you different things. And it may have something to do with the individual, what they experience. It may borrow from our subconscious. These are all thought experiments, by the way. Like I'm not saying I have no belief wrapped up in this. But right now, this is just some of the ideas and patterns that I'm really excited about, I guess, is,
That's
and
fascinating.
And the thing is, like, even I was really into about a year ago, like light phenomenon, like orbs of light, right? If you see an orb of light in your house, it represents a ghost or a spirit. If you see an orb of light in the sky, well, it's a UFO. It's an identified flying object. If you see a ghost in a forest, it's a fairy, a will-o-wisp, or a precursor to a Bigfoot encounter.
Mm-hmm.
The list goes on and on. But the one thing that is, in terms of this phenomenon, that is pretty consistent is orbs of light. So it makes one wonder, are orbs of light kind of the raw form of weirdness? And then
Yeah.
it will turn into whatever it wants. So if you're in a forest and you're looking for Bigfoot, well, it's going to show you Bigfoot. If you're out sky watching in the desert of Southern California, well, it's going to be a UFO. I don't know. I'm not saying I believe that, but it really makes you wonder, because I think a lot of people, no one's done like a great book about light phenomenon. I think I know of one being written by a friend. I'm not going to say who it is, but it's an exciting book that needs to come out. So
I've had experience with the light phenomenon.
Ooh.
And then let's go back to roads.
Yeah.
And also, let's quickly home in on this idea where your perception, kind of what you anticipate, the light as an energy source, and then it morphs into this thing that somehow it knows how to relate to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the intention, if you want to apply some kind of magical, if you want to stay in this wheelhouse of magic and paranormal happenings, the role of intention, or the role of maybe your consideration set, like, well, how many of these stories are people seeing something they've never seen before or imagined before, is another thing you'd have to consider.
Yeah, right.
But my mind went to Aleister Crowley.
Sure.
So his depiction of Lamb, right? Are you familiar with that drawing?
Of course, yeah.
Where it was like the quintessential.
In Egypt, him and his wife did the it's not the Babylon working, but it's the
Alamantra.
Alamantra. No, it is. You're right. That's exactly what it is.
So that being, and thinking about, I'm not advocating for his practices or any of that,
right.
But he basically was the first one to communicate the stereotypical, egghead alien, the gray, right?
Yeah.
And if he was this powerful magician, and his workings continued on to other generations, like through the works of Parsons and Hubbard or whatever.
Yeah.
And in the wake of that, that's become what so many people see. Like it's like the energy, maybe it was an octopus looking thing for generations, and maybe it lived on the backside of the moon also. And then like once it finally finds a home with enough people, it just kind of sticks with it. Like, and perhaps that is related somehow to that initial projection by someone like Crowley.
Well, I mean, I agree, like that, and that is definitely often pointed at as kind of like the first incarnation of the gray, and that was in the 1920s or maybe like 1917 when he did that, because he was pretty young. He was in Egypt. I think it was on a honeymoon with his wife in Cairo, if I'm remembering correctly. But I always think of like the 60s and 50s, 60s and 70s, where you were seeing this wide variety, almost never the same kind of like entities. It was like so many, which is kind of my favorite era, because it seems like the cases were so deeply weird. But then you hit the 1980s, and it kind of just becomes the gray. It's almost like the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the whatever the phenomenon is, was auditioning different aliens for us to see. They're like, hey, the gray alien got the part, so now it's starring in the Alien show, or the UFO show.
Right. How did that happen? Why was it that rendering that got the part, I wonder?
I have some stonery ideas about that. Like, I think, I guess just to make it American centric, not taking the rest of the world in consideration, but like we were going through a pretty big shift, coming off the 70s, there was the oil crisis, the grain crisis. Then Ronald Reagan became president and really was trying to homogenize America. And really, it was kind of I'm not trying to be political at all, but this is just my view on it, but like, was really bringing it back to like family values and like kind of like a more white Caucasian world, like these are my own thoughts. Obviously, I'm not trying to be controversial, but like it kind of thematically goes with the gray. It really does. Like the gray is
homogenization of the alien into the gray.
Yes, right. And it kind of like really paired well with what was going on in this country. And obviously the gray, because the gray was kind of an American phenomenon at first, then spread out to the rest of the world. And obviously the gray was made extremely popular and became a household name with Whitley Strieber's 1984 New York Times bestseller, Communion. Which was on any mall you would go by. I mean, my mom, I don't know why. My mom is such a nice person, but she just wanted me to read. So it's funny that my mom, when I was like 8 years old, purchased this book for me, and I wasn't able to understand. But a couple years later, I read it and like understood the book, and it scared the hell out of me. Like,
I've heard it's horrifying. I haven't read it. I've heard him discuss it, but I haven't read it. Yeah,
it's a good book. I mean, I think it's an important one to read if you're trying to be a student of UFOs, because it's such a classic. I don't necessarily think it's a literal interpretation of what happened to him, but that's his perception of what happened to him. Yeah. And that's kind of thing with the whole abduction phenomenon. It's like, I really don't know how much, like, I think the cases are genuine in the way they described it. I think people were experiencing something, but I don't think they're actually being pulled out of their bedroom through their walls. I think maybe it was more of like astral projection type thing that they were intermingling with another intelligence, but it was giving them this projection or illusion of them physically being taken out of their bedroom.
I've had one of those experiences.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's really strange, right? Well, all right. You want to start there, or do you want to go back to the orb? I have an orb story. And
I mean, like, well, I mean, whatever. I mean, do it in order of how powerful they were.
Okay. This one actually took me a while to be able to tell and deal with because it was so traumatic. But basically, this was in 1998, probably.
Oh, and that's the abduction era too, man. Yeah.
Was it?
Oh, okay. Abductions were so hot until like 2000. Yeah.
So my worldview and my family system had just kind of really been rocked suddenly. Like when I was about 16, I did my last year of high school without parents in the Midwest. Mm-hmm. And I went from a very religious, my dad was a pastor of a church. Right. Okay. So, right. And then all of a sudden it was like, that's gone. And I was living there in the state without any parental figures at all. And I was, as you can imagine, that's like liberating for somebody who's grown up in the church. And right. It's just like suddenly you're free to develop your own worldview.
Right.
And but really I was more interested in partying and,
I heard that.
What
I was too when I was 18.
How old? Yeah, I was 18 roughly. So anyway, I went through this phase where I was really just kind of half thinking about other options as far as what to believe in, right? I wanted to still be freed to pursue all my proclivities and have fun, and it's like this new influx of opportunities to do things was very appealing to me. So I needed to alter my worldview, right? But I didn't really know where to look. So and what really influenced me, I feel like, was one movie in particular. Do you remember Contact?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay. So in my mind then, and it's been so long ago, but if I had to just kind of distill that, the impactful parts of that movie, it was how it kind of married the idea of the afterlife with the UFO phenomenon, and that she was communicating with her dad, and it was like, maybe it's an alien, maybe it's her dad.
Right. And they gave her a projection that she would recognize. I mean, that's the example of pulling from her consciousness to show her something that she'd be comfortable with.
Yeah. Yeah. So that definitely impacted me, and that it's strange to say. You just consume movies as a kid and you're just like, but for some reason I make this association. Anyway, times got hard. I had to track down a parent.
Yeah.
And so I moved. I left the state I was living in the Midwest and went, moved in with my mom. And the drive was about an 8.5 hour drive. And you remember mini thins back in the day?
Wait, is that like a trucker speed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like pure epinephrine or something.
Yeah.
And you just get them at the gas station, you like get a Mountain Dew and a pack of mini thins and like
Yeah.
and then I'd have like, whatever, just the music going the whole way down.
Right.
Who was I listening to then?
98. Oh, probably something good. It was a good era.
It was really good. Oh man. I'm gonna think of this band later. Oh, Self. Do you remember Self?
No, I don't.
You gotta check that out. I'll send it to you. But anyway, so driving all night. I do it all the time. Like I was kind of in the process of going back and forth because all my friends are in the Midwest, but my security blanket was down south. But it was one of these trips. I had gotten to the apartment where my mom was living, and I laid down in bed and, just trying to calm down, go to sleep. And as I'm drifting off to sleep, I notice, like not audibly, but in my mind, this just kind of music, just like this strange, beautiful, crystalline wave of sound, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was like, it took me a minute to be like, okay, why is that happening? And then I enjoyed it too.
Yeah.
I was like, just appreciating it in my mind. I was like, this is really strange. I'd been high. I had experimented with certain psychedelics from time to time. And so this isn't the kind of thing that should be happening when I'm not doing those things.
Right.
But it didn't startle me at first. Excuse me, because it wasn't completely out of the realm of possibility that, you can hear stuff in your head. Then it became more intense, right? And I'm closing my eyes and I'm just listening to it. And it reached this level of impact, the beauty of it and the intricacy. I became aware that it was too good to be generated in my own mind.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I can't be doing this. This is amazing. It was, my mom had sang in local operas and I'd been exposed to orchestral music. This was beyond something that I'd ever heard.
Right.
And it almost had sort of an image associated with it. Like I would describe it as like a waterfall of diamonds or something, colorful.
Ooh, wow, that's a good description.
Yeah, if it's hard to describe.
Like it's ethereal. It didn't sound like there was a band on stage playing this music. It was like otherworldly.
It was like something you can go there. You can go to the music. It's more than just a sound. It's a place. It's a tangible thing.
It's a good way to put it.
It has a life of its own. So I was just like, more than afraid. I was just like really digging it. I was like,
yeah,
this is amazing.
Nice.
And then this voice came into my head and it was like, it represented itself as more than one being basically. Mm-hmm. But it was like, essentially it was like, hi, making contact. It was like, hi, we're here. We've always been here. We can help you with the answers that you're looking for. Like, and I can't remember the exact wording of the thoughts, but that's what was being communicated. It was like, engage us, this is crazy. But,
no, it's not. I mean, I hear you.
So I, at one point, like I sat up and I was like, you shake your head and you're just like, okay, it's still not scared. Lay back down. And then it kind of resumes, and there's this dialogue where it's like, basically they were like, what the answers you're looking for as far as your worldview are concerned, they're more complex than you've ever imagined, but there's a way to them and we're that way basically. And I mean, have you ever heard anything like this before?
Not exactly like it, but I mean, like definitely like disincarnate voices. I mean, that's pretty common in the high strange world. Yeah. I mean, that the music part it feels unique to me, and I love it. That was
the hook. That was how they entered my consciousness basically, and grabbed my attention. But basically there was a catch. What they were presenting to me, it was like there was this, I had to give consent, and I was afraid to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And in fact, it actually gets worse.
Yeah.
So I sat up. Okay. And you just have to make of this what you will. I sat up. I was like, all right, I'm just going to go. I will go into the bathroom. You just sit on the toilet. I would have been smoking a cigarette if I wasn't in my mom's apartment. I'm just sitting there looking at the linoleum, in the apartment. And the linoleum squares, they had those strange patterns, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And they're like, you just sit there and let your eyes play with them. And,
Yeah.
they just, they do just, you just sit there and stare, basically. Like, okay, what was that? What's happening? Is this in my mind? And you just kind of going back over it. Like, okay, I think that was definitely a third party talking, because I was aware of my own inner dialogue as they were talking,
Right.
which seemed how can that be?
Yeah.
And at this point, as I'm looking at the ground, basically it's like a hologram comes up, and it's the same entities, right? But it's sort of like in a pyramidal. Basically, it's like the ground just bent up,
Right.
And I'm aware that it's not physically happening, but this is just what I can see, like a hologram. And it starts to kind of spin, and a face will come out and be like,
"What?
This is real. You just have to say yes."
What?
And they said the thing was, you'll never be the same. They said, we can give you this, but you'll never be the same. Okay. And I'm like, okay, this feels like I had some awareness of like the Faustian bargain,
Yeah.
And-
That. Yeah. Exactly.
And so my only, I was, on one hand, scared that I'm losing my mind
Right.
as this is happening. And then on the other hand, I'm scared that it's actually happening. It's
Mhm.
scary in either scenario. It's scary.
Yeah. Totally. Totally.
So I just tested it the only way that I knew how. And that was, my grandmother and grandfather had been missionaries like for a long time, in different remote parts of the world, in the Christian church. And my grandmother used to tell stories about encountering dark entities.
Mhm.
And she talked about them as if they were kind of tricksterish,
Yeah.
And she told me, we're sitting around, she'll tell her stories, and she's like, if you ever encounter this, though, if you want to test it, you use this name. And the name was Jesus. So as it's doing that, I'm just like, I have no idea what to do, how to engage this. I'm scared to death. I'm scared if it's real. I'm scared if it's not real. I just said, and I did this as childlike as I could. Like, I'm trying to like look like, don't hurt me. I'm just a little kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, in my mind, I'm not talking out loud, but I said, what are you? Are you like in heaven with Jesus? And when I did that, the thing, like the faces, they just like screamed out, and like this grimacing, like, and then it just was like, zoop, gone. And I'm like, okay. And at that point, I'm so scared to death. I just like got up, walked out, opened my mom's bedroom. I'm like, laid down with mom. I'm like, Mom. She was like, what's wrong? I'm like, I don't know. Can you just like pray for me? And she did. And then that was it.
Whoa.
And that's 25 years ago, 27 years ago. Nothing like that's ever happened since, It was really hard for me to talk about that. Like, I would refuse. I never told anybody that story for, 15 years or whatever, because you just are afraid it's going to like become a pattern. You're going to.
Well, and yet you don't want to be known for the person who sees weird geometric face aliens, in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's funny. I feel like there's something weird that happens when you hit 40 and you're like, I just don't care anymore. Like, and why did I ever care? Like, but if you don't mind, can I make a couple comments about that experience?
Yeah.
Well, so there's this, I'm just going to reference the book and not go into it too much, but there's this wonderful book. It's not an easy read, but it's written by an academic named George P. Hansen, and it's called The Trickster and the Paranormal. And you're like where you were in life. So you said you were 18-ish, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is a typical time where when you're 18, you're entering manhood or, adulthood. So that is a liminal time because great change is happening. You were traveling back and forth, almost aimless, like you had two different homes, but not one home. That is incredibly liminal. So when I speak of liminality, liminality is this attribute that is so linked to this stuff. So a lot of times when people have these experiences, it's like when they're moving or they're getting divorced or they lost their job and they're in the middle. You don't have like a concrete footing. And it seemed like this was like, it's funny. Had you just told me that experience, the first thing I would do as somebody who likes to research and investigate this stuff is ask you where you were in life. And I would have guessed 100% you were exactly in this kind of state. 18, aimless, going back and forth, totally not sure what's going on with your life. Like you experience this stuff at the most common time to experience this stuff. I'm not just like blowing smoke. This is coming from a lifetime of research.
Yeah.
People have these experiences when they're in a liminal zone. And we all go through liminal zones. There's always change that is change that we choose, but there's also change that is thrust upon us, such as losing a parent, losing a wife, losing a job, having to move without, like this is those are the times when you're in between things where you hear so many stories. So like, while your story is unique and I've never heard one quite like it exactly, the state that you were in at that time of your life is so common. So
really?
common. Yeah, I would have bet, bet $1,000 that the state, had you not told me where you were, I would have pretty much guessed that's where you were.
So many weird things happened in that season of my life. I remember using the word limbo, to describe, knowing that I'm just like, sort of like a castaway and having no real skills and, not having any idea what to do, but still like also just being strangely lured into a spiritual place, into thinking about interdimensionality and all that stuff, looking for meaning in those places and maybe looking for a way out of what I saw as kind of like a really boring and cage-ish life,
Yeah, you were ready for something new. I mean, I remember feeling the same thing in that towards the end of high school. And I was lucky. I had a, good family. I had good friends in high school. It was a real pleasant experience for me for the most part. But I was so ready to enter the next phase, the next chapter. I was ready to turn the page and go to the next chapter of my life, or act 2, if you will, thinking of it as the narrative structure. And that is liminal in itself. When you're desiring to turn the page and go to the next chapter, that is liminal too. But like liminality in the age of 18 are very linked. And you hear a lot of people have these. I mean, I've had people on my show where they're talking about the first experience I had with like an entity in my room. Oh, I was like 17, 18. I'm like, of course you were. A lot of people had this from their child. It's not just when you're in liminal spots. I guess my point is that when you are in a liminal zone in your life, pay attention. There likely something weird might happen.
Weird stuff happens.
Yeah.
I made that trip so many times. I just remember encountering the strangest people too. Like one time I'm driving down, I guess it was like 55 South, and it's like the middle of the day. And this random guy just pulls up next to me like in a fury. And he's like, I mean, this is disturbing, but he's like making a blowjob sign at me. Like he's some highway, assumes I'm some prostitute just driving down the I was like, what the I pretended to open my glove box like I was grabbing a pistol, and he was like, but there's some crazy people out there, and when you're so vulnerable, it's like you just get this onslaught of weird stuff happening.
I wanted to mention to you too, because you kind of right before you told the story, you were talking about how, I don't know, I can't remember how you phrased it, but that like death and UFOs and you kind of thought maybe there was something to it. Well, I think you might be onto something too. So Whitley Strieber's wife, Ann Strieber, when Whitley wrote the book, they were getting thousands of letters from all over the world about people who had experienced an abduction scenario. And one night, Anne wakes Whitley up after reading a bunch of these letters, and wakes him up and goes, Whitley, I think this all has something to do with death. And that is really interesting to me. And it was so interesting to one of my friends, and probably my favorite modern author on these weird topics is a dude named Joshua Cutchin. And folks, I cannot impress upon you how important it is to read these books. But the last book he wrote was a book that I think you particularly would find incredibly interesting, and it's called Ecology of Souls. And it's taking the UFO phenomenon, going back to antiquity, and relating it to death. And the book is completely changed how I view and think about this topic. It is so while I'm not saying like UFOs and all this weird stuff has something to do with death, I'm not saying that for sure. I think there are patterns and motifs that really make me think hard and kind of make me reframe my questions. So that's why I always think it's important to read these books, because like people get kind of like, oh, well, UFOs are boring and this stuff's kind of boring. It's like, Valet, I've read all Valet's books, but like there's always new stuff to discover. And like, I guess for me, I don't want to say this is my spirituality, but like outsiders could view it as that. But for me, it's this quest. It's like the most important. It's like, really, what's the nature of reality? Why are we here? What happens after we die? These are like the big questions everyone has, even if you're not into weird stuff. But you can use UFOs and high strangeness as a lens to look at the nature of reality, to look at what happens to us after we die. Or, I think there's something to it, man. I really do. Like, it's hard to explain to people who have maybe read some of these books or been looking at stuff for a long time. But I'm here to tell you, there are patterns that have emerged. And look, Native American cultures right here in America sort of were hinting at the same thing, so these aren't new ideas, they're ancient ideas.
Even ancient Egypt, right? There's a real crossover between the afterlife and modern day ufology and
absolutely. There's
Stargate
even like
stuff.
And there's all this bird and flying winged creature imagery in Sumerian culture, in nearly every indigenous culture in America, going back to old people who believe in fairies. It's called the psychopomp. And oftentimes birds are seen as a psychopomp. And a psychopomp is an entity that is the bringer from life to death. It's like you ride, like, Native Americans kind of thought you'd ride on the wings of a bird to get to the next world.
Okay.
And so UFOs, what are they? They're flying technological machines, which would make sense in the 20th century more than a bird. Because we're, in the 20th century, we're thinking about going to the moon, the space race, nuclear weapons and stuff like that. So we were in the space age.
Yeah.
So the phenomenon went from birds to UFOs. I'm not sure that they're different,
like that could just be them. That's just, again, them projecting to us in a way that they think will be most meaningful to us.
Absolutely.
I find it less plausible, the whole mechanical option than an ethereal interdimensional bird or something.
Right. Right.
Yeah. It is fascinating.
It's fascinating. And like, and that's the thing. It's like, because I feel like there are people in these fields who decide at a certain point, like, this is what it is. I'm sticking to it. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to sell the book for the rest of my life. And I can't change my mind because I have to sell this book. I hear that because people have to pay the rent.
Yeah.
But if you're being honest and you keep on researching, and you don't stop once you think you have found the answer, then you have stopped learning and you're missing out on a lot of new ideas. Like, I have a feeling in 3 months, I'm going to think totally different. If you interview me again, I have new and different things to say. And certainly by the end of my life, whenever that is, I'm going to have a whole new idea of what the meaning of all this stuff is. And to me, that is beautiful and wonderful, because it's the mystery is what I'm after. I'm addicted to mystery. And I think if all this stuff was solved, then what's the point? I don't think this is solvable stuff in our human form.
Yeah. There's no perfect sum, right?
I don't think so.
Only in math. So I understand the mystery is what I'm in love with, right?
Yes.
And it's the pursuit. So it's like, there's the pursuit of truth. I actually do want to know. I'm genuinely seeking an answer to whatever the question may be. But like in the case of my visitation, I didn't want whatever answer they had on, on offer. I would have thought that I would have said yes, you know?
Yeah. Well,
But
I mean, but also like you weren't probably as confident as
yeah.
you are now. Like if this happened now, I'd be interested to see if you would how you would bargain with this disincarnate entity and voice and sound. Like you may have a totally different reaction. You may be like, okay, hey, let's have a conversation here.
Yeah, can we have
I
more of a
agree,
dialogue? Yeah.
before I agree to your contract, let's talk about the terms. Let's negotiate a little bit. It's like, hey, you say I'll never be the same. Well, can I have some parts of me be the same? Can I still love pizza and the Chicago Bears and then the rest of it
Yeah.
changing? So,
Can
like,
I
you know,
can I not have to start a cult and like wear a
yeah,
robe?
exactly. I don't want to have to change my attire. I really like the way I dress. So, you know, like I also do think like even we're laughing about this stuff. I think it's important. While I take the stuff incredibly seriously, I don't always take it literally, right? I think there's symbology and personal meanings that we can derive from it. But I do think, and this has been told to me by like John Tenney and some people who are way more established and have been literally investigating for decades. They say when you go into like let's say a haunted dwelling and you're very serious, you're like, did it hurt when your stomach got sliced open and blood was coming out? To him, he goes, that's a bad way to get results. But if you go in there and you're light and you're telling jokes and you're having fun and you share a meal with some, if it's just wheat thins and crackers and cheese or whatever, like that is when stuff happens. When you're going in there and you're not trying to like aggressively engage. Like you see a lot of these Bigfoot hunters and they go in the forest with guns and dogs and they're like, come out, creature. And it's like, if I was a Bigfoot, I wouldn't want to interact with those people. I want to interact with the lovely people. It's like, hey, we would love to have a lovely experience with you. It's like, those are the type of folks I would want to interact with. So it's kind of a golden rule thing. I like to think about it when I do go out and look for this stuff with witnesses who have had these encounters. I try to make it a lovely experience. I usually bring the person like some pastry and a coffee. I want to talk about their life. Like, oh, let's talk about Nebraska football. And I have not had results that weirdness happens. But to me, I try to make everything super positive, super fun. Because at the end of the day, we're adults in a forest looking for a weird creature that shouldn't be there. So if you take that too seriously, I don't know. I guess at the end of the day, to me, it's just not as fun.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like,
and it's you did such a good job of painting that picture. Like it's a little nuts to you have this imaginary creature as far as anyone's concerned. In actuality, it's still possibly not real, but you're going to project this violent image upon it and you're going to come out there with your Rambo costume.
Right.
Or I've heard stories on Strange Familiars, and I've
heard
watching that show where people have these intimate relationships with these Bigfoot, big feet, and it's just a totally different approach to exploring that phenomenon. And if you're gonna choose a projection, I'm gonna project the friendly family of big feet who wants to share muffins.
Yeah, and I have no evidence to back this up. 000. But my guess, because I've just heard about various people's stories, and I always ask them, well, you were out looking for this thing or you were investigating a haunted place, and I'm always like, what was going through your mind? What was your process and approach? And the people who had this kind of light, positive approach, they have a light and positive experience. The people who go in aggressively, like Joey Tough Guy, cranking Red Bulls, bro, we're gonna bag this demon. Either nothing happens or it's very negative. They get something reflected back to them that's negative because they're putting negativity and like tough guyness into the situation. So I feel like you get at, I mean, it's like a lot of things in life. It's like if you go to a concert in a bad mood and you're going to be like a dick to people on the porta potty line, well, you're going to have a bad experience, man. I'm sorry, you just are. But if you go and you're patient and let someone cut in front and ahead of you, I promise you the experience is going to be better. Like this is just like, I mean, these are unprovable things, yet I think there's something to it, I guess.
Good human, good Bigfoot.
Right. It's like the golden rule. I think the golden rule applies to the paranormal too. Why not?
Makes sense. Yeah. some of these guys, they bring the demons to the party, I think, you know?
Yeah. And like while I'm not saying I wouldn't like to experience demonic activity if that's what I was going to look for,
Yeah.
but I'm still going to bring my lightness and my personality, which my personality is like, let's laugh, let's have fun,
Yeah.
and let's be excited about what we're doing. Because at the end of the day, the best thing about being into this stuff is that it makes you do things, if you're really into it, that you wouldn't typically do. Like I would not be going to like state parks and walking, rails to trail, 20 miles of rails to trail, uh, trails along the Missouri River if I wasn't into this stuff. It gets me out into the natural world. It makes an adult like myself get to go out and play an adventure like I'm in Goonies.
Yep.
I wouldn't have that otherwise. And it's such a wonderful part of my life. Like I wouldn't trade it for the world. Like, I may not be a rich man, but I'm rich in that I am never ever bored, my man. If I have a day off, well, I am going to go to Blair, Nebraska and go to a Dollar General where Bigfoot was reported rooting through a dumpster. And that to me is like going to Hawaii. It is so fun. I love it. I love it. So
you're my best friend. You
but
are.
I'm saying like with this stuff, like it's like it doesn't need to be treated like all sinister and serious. Like you can take it very seriously, but make fun the goal, because why not? Why, like, you're not going to pay for this. No one's going to, I mean, some people will get rich and famous, obviously, but like, I don't think that's the goal when people get into it. I think they have this curiosity.
Yeah.
They want to track it down, and it's maybe a lens to understand yourself better and the people around you better. It's like folklore, whether all this stuff is folklore, that doesn't take the importance out of it, because folklore has major impacts in society.
Yeah.
It does.
It impacts how you spend your time. That's
Absolutely.
our commodity. We got the time. Right. We're here. What are you going to do today? I'm going to go look for witch marks on the boulder.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, if you get into this stuff and then you decide to participate and going to like investigate, and an investigation, like I think a lot of people are like, well, I'm an investigator. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean like you're meeting with witnesses and having a little pad and pencil and you have like instruments and a recorder and all that junk. No, investigating just means like I'm going to go look at a place where things have been reported. That is investigating. That's how I investigate. I'm not like a guy who brings a bunch of gear with them, because I'm not a gear guy. So why would I do something I'm not? Yeah. I go out and just try to, like maybe I'll drop a little tobacco, put a little like, offering, maybe place an apple by a tree or something like that. And it's not necessarily because I think a physical flesh and blood Bigfoot's going to come and eat it, but it's my little like ritual before I go investigating. So,
and sometimes doesn't weird stuff happen?
Yeah, I mean, I've had odd things happen. Nothing that is like really worth talking about, because it's only weird to me and weird in the situation. Usually the weirdness when I'm investigating or researching too is synchronicities that feel totally impossible.
Right.
But when you explain synchronicities to people, it's like explaining dreams. They never mean as much to, like when someone's like, oh man, it's a crazy dream. They tell you the dream, you're like, yeah, that's crazy, but it doesn't have the resonance when they
don't understand how relevant it is to you. It's like the language of your heart. Like this thing happened and it was so profound within the context of my entire life. I just can't believe it. It's impossible.
And these, in like I cannot. I think it was not Carl Jung. I can't remember. Someone in the 20th century said, when you are doing consciousness expanding research or looking into it or reading about it or involving yourself in any kind of consciousness expanding endeavor, your synchronicities will be off the charts. And that is what I have found. That rings very true to me, because when I am like in deep research mode or investigating, the synchronicities just start coming in like crazy. I'm like, what the heck? This is so nuts. And to me, that is experiencing something weird. I mean, it just is, because like a lot of these things feel absolutely implausible.
Yeah. Here's a synchronicity. It's not that crazy. It's probably nothing. But not long ago, I got asked to come on a show of a guy who I'd interviewed before. He kind of is a parapolitical and occult author. Mm-hmm. But he introduced me. He had me confused, but it was so wild because he like introduced me and then provided a last name that sounds like my last name, but is not my last name. And he was like, spelt it and everything. And then he's talked about how I had authored a book on the Fortean. And I was like, I was kind of embarrassed for both of us. I just let it go. And then we went on with our show. But then like not long after that, I'd reached out to you, or no, it was before I reached out to you. I was just going through your back catalog, and you actually did interview the guy who he thought I was.
Who was it? Who was it?
Tanner Boyle.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I'd never even heard of him. I was like, what is William talking about? I don't know.
How
I thought he was just making it up to make me sound more interesting. I was like,
hey, this is weird.
Yeah. But he didn't spell Boyle. He spelled like the phonetic spelling of my actual last name. Oh my God, it was super weird. And then I was like, the next day I was like, oh, William was just talking about this guy. And I listened to it. It was a good show you did with him. He's an interesting guy.
I really like Tanner. I highly recommend his Substack. Very worth subscribing to.
Yeah, the spooky stuff or whatever it's called. I subscribed to it. Yeah, immediately.
Yeah. Getting spooked. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Getting spooked. Yeah. But anyway, that was kind of synchronistic. But yeah, those weird things have happened to me.
Yeah.
On occasion.
And they will more and more as you get deeper and deeper into it, and you'll be like, "Oh my gosh!" And like it happens with, I mean, like I guess my when I say research, like I have this like deep obsession with documenting the weird stuff in Nebraska and kind of the area around me, because I feel like that is what a lot of I'm always encouraging people to, like, everyone's like, "Well, there's no weird stuff," where I'm like that is completely untrue. Like you mentioned Lubbock. I'm not sure if you live close to Lubbock. But Lubbock's got one of the most famous mass sightings of the 1950s. Like, you should look into that and research it and see if there's anyone alive who was there. Like, if the Lubbock case happened in the state of Nebraska, I would be there talking to the historians, librarians. I would pull every newspaper article I could find, because it was a big one. It's a famous case. And I would see, like, well, are the sons and daughters of some of the witnesses or the sheriff still alive? Could I talk to them? Because you may be able to uncover a piece to this story that us UFO heads would be like, oh my God, what? And to me, that is a rush. And when you do that kind of research, get ready for a synchronistic water blast, my friend. But I like I was saying, like, I always I talk about this ad nauseum on my show, like, because like I thought, like, because I lived in LA for 20 years and I moved back to Omaha, where I'm originally from, during the pandemic, and my industry was shut down for like a year. There was literally no auditions, no work at all. And so I was like, well, here's my opportunity to play John Keel and really research. I'm going to do this research project where I'm going to go beyond Google, go through old newspapers, travel to libraries, talk to historians. And my whole thought was like, well, maybe I'll find 2 or 3 cases that I couldn't find on the internet. Dude, I'm telling you, if you think everything is on Google, you are so deeply wrong. You have to talk to people. You have to talk to historians, librarians. Get a subscription to newspapers.com. It's $30 a year. There is so much, and everyone who's listening to this, wherever you live, I'm telling you, around you, make that your little microcosm and dig super deep. And then we can all share this stuff from these like little localized areas and go like, whoa, that's weird. That the same sort of thing happened here. There's a pattern there. Now we can follow that. Oh, now we can ask better questions about X, Y, Z. So I do think it's like, when you kind of look at it like that, well, that doesn't really cost me any money. So I have to drive to this state park, which is like 20 minutes away on a Sunday. That's great. And like, I'll get some exercise and hike around. I'll take my wife, my kids, and I won't really tell them what I'm doing, but we'll pretend like we're enjoying nature. Meanwhile, I'm looking for a purple fuzzy creature that appeared here in 1963. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's fun. So like, there's so much to be done on the local level, to where, like, I mean, you live in Texas. I mean, Texas is tons of great stuff. I mean, like, East Texas Wild Man, Lubbock Lights. I mean, like,
you could look into that Lubbock Light thing.
You need to, because now I'm giving you a homework assignment. I think you should get obsessed with that case and see if you can find any witnesses that are still alive, or their family members, because you could interview them, have them on your show, or just like interview them and then report back to us UFO heads, and you may be able to get one little piece of new information that changes everything.
That would be fun. That would be so fun. It's so refreshing to think that there are things you can't find on the internet that you need to go into a building and look in a
I'm-
box of files for.
Dude,
Yeah.
I'm telling you. And the first thing I would recommend to anyone who wants to do local research is get a newspapers.com subscription, which is $30.
I need to do
And
that.
it will have every state newspaper wherever you are. So if you're in Minnesota, it's going to have the Minneapolis one. It's going to have a Sheboygan one. It's got the little tiny ones. And if you start getting good at the keyword search, like, crop circles, dude, I'm telling you, the stuff I find UFO cases from like 1903. They didn't call it UFOs. They called it like a flying moon because they didn't have the nomenclature back then.
Wow.
But I found Bigfoot cases from like 1896 where a mayor of a small town in Nebraska was hiring men with torches and shotguns to go kill this 8-foot tall wild man covered in fur. They just didn't have the term Bigfoot back then. So, like,
what fun research. I mean, that's just fun to read about for you, I'm sure.
Fun.
Yeah.
I love it. This is what I do
Yeah.
at night. My wife goes to bed really early. I'm a night owl. So from like 9 to 1 o'clock in the morning, nearly every night, I'm on newspapers.com and I have files and files and files. I have so many cases I don't even know what to do with. It's an embarrassment of riches. But had I just like Googled Nebraska UFOs, I'd get like 3 or 4 hits. So Google is totally it's the first place you should start, obviously. But don't stop there, because I used to kind of like say, well, if it's not on the internet, man, then it probably, then there's nothing there. Like, that could not be further from the truth.
I'm excited. Yeah. So that's a huge lead generator for you. Newspapers.com.
Yeah, I can. It's invaluable, because back in the day, until like the early 2000s, newspapers were still important. And local news, even in a tiny like town of like 900 people, was written by locals. Now it's all news aggregates. So like a story in Kearney, Nebraska is written by someone in Chicago.
Right.
So there's no one locally reporting things. But back in the day, if someone saw a UFO, well, that was a major story in a small town. And so they would report it.
Up until when do you think? When did that
change? I think like the age of the internet. So like early 2000s, once the internet kind of came around, newspapers became less important. And then look at today, like even New York Times is barely such a thing, So local newspapers they're just at news aggregates that are like, for instance, like I know like a lot of the small towns, I can see where the articles come from if they're written in Dallas, Texas.
Oh, really? Okay.
So someone in Dallas, Texas who has zero connection with the town, doesn't know any of the people, and they're not going to report a localized UFO story or localized Bigfoot story. I mean, they used in these old newspapers, sometimes I'll read a whole article where it's like Jim and Mary Sue invited Pat and a newcomer to the church over for lemonade, and there was an article about that. So it was this mundane stuff, but that's actually great reporting, in my opinion.
Yeah,
because it's about the town. That's what I would want to read about.
Yeah, it gives you the context for the thing that's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if something weird happened, like sometimes you would find articles like, Justine and Melissa saw a ghost in a gymnasium of the high school. I mean, like, you'll find this stuff, but you would never find that today, ever, ever, ever. But back in the day, like it's like they had the nerve to report this stuff. Like,
isn't that great?
It's great.
And so this stuff it's indexed in such a way that you can search it with keywords and it'll reference these old articles.
Yeah. Okay. So you can there has like 3 separate spaces, one for like the kind of keyword, one for the location, and one for dates if you have a specific date. Like if it's like, you're looking for articles about this from like 1906 to 1966, you can put that in there. So I've now gotten like God tier at using the keyword search. I'm not trying to brag. That's not to brag about. I just waste a lot of time. But I've now gotten very good at it. And actually, there is a skill involved in kind of using this stuff, because like at a certain time, you have to get a little more creative and clever about just putting like UFO, Bigfoot, ghost, Black Panther. You have to like start
you have to learn the local nomenclature, maybe,
Yeah. Like local monster is a keyword. I remember when I came across that as a keyword search, I'm like, like, because they didn't have the term Bigfoot back in 1906. But guess what? There are sightings in Bigfoot. Bigfoot just didn't like come on the scene in 1960 during the Patterson-Gimlin stuff. It's been happening for as long as people have been, it's an old phenomenon. So,
wow. I'm excited. This has been so enlightening for me.
Good,
It
man.
has.
Oh no, I'm good. Like I just want to pass on the joy, because I mean,
Yeah.
like this stuff has really been, it's always been there for me. It's like a safety blanket. Like I was so career driven for a lot of my life because I had to be, but I'm not so much anymore. Well, this stuff, if I could leave acting tomorrow if someone was going to pay me $60,000 a year in health insurance to investigate this stuff locally, I would take that job in a second
Oh
because
man. Yeah.
I'd figure out like how to live poor and I
Yeah.
would do it and be the happiest person you ever met. So,
Well, I'm glad you're finding all this time to do it anyway.
mhm.
I mean, like I said, I'm so impressed. Just at your access, with your access for one. I mean, I can understand why people want to talk to you. You're
Oh,
amazing.
thank you. Thank you.
Brilliant. You're a brilliant analyst, and you've done so much reading, as you said. So it's
Yeah,
just
it's
really
all
fun to talk
work.
to you.
These are ideas that have come naturally. It's just I've been willing to put in the work because it's like I'm just so curious that
Yeah.
I feel like I do not have a choice. It's like, and then like we all have our obsessions. Some people get obsessed about with like fantasy football stuff. That's great. I mean, I'm not saying
Yeah.
what I'm doing is any more important, but for me, it's just the weirder, the better. I love surrealism, absurdism. And I think art and high strangeness are inextricably linked as well. I
Mhm.
think a lot of these images that people have painted maybe are inspired by experiences and stuff that people have had 1,000 years ago. So
Yeah. The petroglyphs and all that. What's that
sure.
about? Probably, maybe they
I
saw
mean,
something in the sky.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't think people have been just experiencing stuff in the 20th century. I think people have
Yeah.
experienced UFOs have been around since man's been around. I mean, like I don't know that for sure. That's just my thoughts on it, though. I don't think any of this is new. I think the way it presents itself is new. But if you even
Yeah.
think about UFOs, it's like, let's just say, in 1945, the flying saucer age began with Kenneth Arnold. Then from 1945 to like 1980 or like 1989, all it was basically was either a flying cigar, but mostly it was flying saucers. The 90s come, it's flying triangles and orbs of light. Then triangles go. Triangles are seen sort of a little bit today, but it's like Tic Tacs, which I'm pretty sure are military. I don't think it's something anomalous at all. But but it's mostly orbs of light people see. So the phenomenon is changing before our eyes. And I kind of think maybe in our lifetime, we're gonna see another manifestation of the UFO. Who
Yeah.
knows what it's gonna be? I have no idea. There's no way to predict it. But this stuff has changed before, even in our lifetime, since we've been on this like little rock in the short. I mean, we've been here for a blink of an eye. But you and I have actually watched the phenomenon change. We
Yeah.
grew up, we were born in the saucer era. The saucer era does not exist anymore. No one sees flying saucers. I mean, maybe you'll hear one every once in a while, but like not really.
Yeah. There's a real well, I'll just interdimensionality as a theme
Right.
has become much more prevalent in the discussion. And I can, as abstract as it is, it feels like a bigger net for me. It
Uh-huh.
it encompasses more. Basically all
Yeah.
of it. Bigfoot,
Right.
aliens, ghosts. It's just this idea that, you know, there's a veil, and on the
Yeah.
other side is other stuff.
Yeah. And it may be in front of us all the time. Like, because I mean, like we are experiencing like like a dog's reality. Yeah, like is probably so vastly different than our reality. Like if a dog sees a watch on our wrist, it doesn't know what it is or it represents,
Oh, that's
right?
weird to think about.
Like
It's messing me up.
like
Yeah.
to a kitty cat, a laser
Yeah.
pointer is a UFO. It's this projection of this object that moves around erratically on a wall or on the ground, and they're like after it goes away, and now it's just gone all of a sudden. It vanished. That is exactly what a UFO does. It appears in the sky, moves around erratically, like airplanes do not move,
Yeah.
and then it just disappears. It vanishes. So reality tunnels, like Robert Anton Wilson always talked about, are important because while we think we're the apex, like the highest, like the universe gets, we're Homo sapiens, gosh darn it, that we have it all figured out. We don't have it figured out. We understand the reality that is germane to us. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's the answer to what reality is.
Yeah.
So there is maybe a higher dimension of reality that we have no way to decipher. It acts like complete nonsense to us, but it may be, like totally like UFOs may be mundane, ghosts may be mundane. It's just we don't understand it.
I think of like, here we are living on the plane, right? And then the creature from without, it just it can drop some spittle on there.
Right.
We don't understand it. We don't experience it. Like we live here in this two-dimensional space, and then there's all of this, right?
Right.
The creator or these interdimensional beings who have the run of this. They can basically interact with us in a way that we can't interact with them.
That's exactly right.
We're constantly puzzled.
Yeah, it's the whole fishbowl scenario, like you have your little fish tank at home. Once a day, you put your hand in there and you drop some food from it, like manna from heaven. Like to a fish's perception, they're like, "What is this giant hand?" I mean, that might as well be your hand. Might as well be a UFO sprinkling down some kind of magic sustenance that feeds us that we crave every day. But they don't understand, like, oh, this is my owner, my character. Like, they're not thinking about that. They're not thinking that you went to the food store, purchased the food in a car. They don't know what a car is. So it's like they're unaware, like our reality makes no sense. We might as well be UFO occupants to them, so.
Yeah. That's like somebody said about the sun. It's like you can't see the sun, but by the sun, you see everything else,
Right. Of course. Yeah.
We know these things are happening and informing our lives and informing, that it's really such a blessing when something weird happens, isn't it?
It's great. It's great.
And when you hear these reports, it's like, oh yeah, I have more to ponder than just how am I going to pay this bill and build this sandwich or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, it's such a great weird life.
Yeah, it is. In fact, I have a story that just came in to me yesterday. It's actually from a friend. So my friend's wife was they had just got a new toaster oven, and so she was taking the old toaster oven and cleaning it, and then she was packing it into a box to take to the Salvation Army. And she took the box, set it outside by her car because she was going to go get groceries, run some errands, and then drop it off. Well, she went upstairs, take a shower, and then she came back downstairs. And her husband, by the way, saw her clean the toaster oven and pack it. Came back downstairs, found the toaster oven, plugged in, and it was dirty like it had never been washed.
What?
All in 20 minutes. And the husband, my friend, saw this thing be washed, cleaned, put in a box, taken to her car. And it was only them home. Their kids were at school. So what does that mean? It's like, is that some weird like time slip? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I love the story. And it really, like, she actually got on the phone and she's not into this stuff at all. She's like, this terrifies me. Do I need to be scared to live in my house now? I'm like, I don't think so. And my buddy Aaron, I said his name, whoops. But
it's fine.
He's kind of like intrigued by it. It's like, oh man, I want you kind of come over. So I'm going to go over there and we're going to try to like poke the bear a little bit. I don't know what we're going to do. Like, I don't use instruments, but like, I'm going to go do it. He was like, come over and do a vibe check. I'm like, you got it, pal. So this weekend I'm going to pop over because like it really troubled his wife. And I'm trying to put her at ease where I'm like, I don't think you need to be scared to live in your house. Like, it's fine. You can just look at it as a lovely little thing, but like, they're truly like, how does that happen?
And how do you go on with life?
Yeah.
How do I go on living? My reality has just been shaken to the core by a toaster.
Right.
What's scarier, that a ghost did that, or like it's some, what's that word, poltergeist phenomenon?
Yeah.
Or that it's like a glitch in the matrix and we're living in a simulation and they're messing with us.
Right. And that is typical poltergeist behavior, because I mean a lot of times you hear about books when they talk about poltergeist stuff, like a man or a woman goes into their kitchen, unloads the groceries, goes out to like smoke a cigarette, come back, all the groceries are packed back up in the bags. That is very common, I should say it's not very common. It's common in the poltergeist reports.
I hope she'll lean into that, because I you see a lot of people's lives get disrupted by the simulation theory. If that's something that someone's struggling with and I have the rare opportunity to interact with them, the help I would offer is, ultimately what you're saying is, am I real? The question is, and the answer is, whom should I say is asking? Right?
Yeah. Right.
You have the power to question.
Yeah.
And that's all the power you need, right?
Yep.
It's like it's similar to I think, therefore I am, I guess.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah. So yeah, be careful. I recommend that people be careful. I've actually had some pretty close friends that have been really bogged down in the notion that we live inside a simulation, and it's kind of robs them of joy and meaning, and
yeah,
it's a sad reality.
It is too, and like it's like the whole simulation. Well, I mean, it's interesting. Like most people, I find it interesting, but like it's I do see it disrupt people's lives. There's a good documentary about, I can't remember what it's called, but like it's kind of a cautionary tale where like people's lives got so disrupted where like one guy went and killed his whole family. He's like, why does it matter? We live in a video game, and like, oh buddy.
Yeah.
Like I think they're like, I think like a lot of conspiracy theory is incredibly disruptive and harmful to people's lives, and doesn't usually end up well when people go down the conspiracy rabbit hole. I think it's more often than not, it leads to a very negative place and a distrust of everything. And I don't think that's a great way to like conduct one's life. It just doesn't seem like a happy way. And I kind of think the same thing with the simulation, where it's like, it is interesting. It's fun to talk about for sure, but we're not going to know. So if it's harming your life, and the same thing with UFOs and ghosts, like this stuff can be incredibly disruptful to people's lives, and has been. There are many cases I could point to, but to me, it's not. It's a life enhancer. But if you feel any of this stuff is like giving you negative feelings, or it's not for you, then stop. Just don't do it. It's not for you. Like it's in this stuff, like UFOs and everything, is definitely not for everyone. Like it is for me. It enhances my life. It makes me happy. It makes me smile. But if it didn't, and then there's a lot of people. I think it's rare for people to feel the way I do. I think for a lot of people, this is disruptive stuff. They're like, I want to think about my kids. I want to be a soccer coach for my kids. Like, I don't want to think about this stuff because it doesn't make me feel good. I'm like, then don't. Avoid it. I think, these paranormal high strange topics, there are people who are ready for it and there's people who are not. I think if it's going to disrupt your like nature of reality and how you think and how you conduct your life, stop doing it. That'd be
that's great advice. That's exactly what I had to do when I was 18. I was like, whatever that was, I'm not ever going to think about that again. And I I let it go, and it was never an issue again until I wanted to talk about it. But disengagement is interesting. Again, this notion of intent, disengaging from this type of pursuit, whether it be mentally or otherwise, it seems to be sort of your option.
You have a choice, I believe in free will. So it's like, people feel like, am I real? Simulation, what does that mean? I guess I can just do whatever now. It's like, I mean, I guess you could say that about anything, like if you just want to throw your arms up in the air and go like, oh, nothing matters. I'm like, I get that is your choice. And I'm not saying you're incorrect, but like, it does seem like a negative kind of, not a very like positive way to live. And
like, didn't you see Big Lebowski? I mean, the nihilists are not the best.
Right? No. It's like, well, that's the thing. It's like I'm not like and I guess I would, if I had to label myself, I would be an agnostic because I'm just undecided about everything. But like when you meet people who are so fixed in their belief system, and no new information is going to sway them no matter what. That too, I think, is problematic because I think that can affect politics and policies and the world around you and how our leaders conduct their leadership. Like, I think we should always be open to new information. Like I don't think like people who are just like, this is it, and I will hear no other, like possibilities. I just don't think that's an honest or positive way to conduct one's life.
I mean, maybe if you're a hermit, whatever, but we live, we have to be around each other, and we're made to interact and help and love, and by and large, I guess. But
I think so too.
You're a great guy, man.
You're a great guy.
I've enjoyed this so much.
Yeah, man, this has been really fun.
So do you have a scary story that you want to wrap up with?
Sure. I'll tell a Nebraska one just because, I'm a Nebraska researcher. So in 1957, in Fall City, Nebraska, a man by the pseudonym of Mr. Hanks was driving back with a car full of groceries to his family. And Fall City, I've been there. It's a very tiny little town, but it was even smaller back in the 50s. So he was driving to a neighboring town with a bigger grocery store, more options, and he's cruising back into town, and he kind of notices something up in the air. It looks like a large bird. He's like, well, that's crazy. Maybe it's a blue heron or like, a large hawk or eagle. And then he keeps on driving, but he sees the thing and starts getting lower. And he's like, that is a huge bird, like really, really big. And it looks like it's having some trouble flying. Like it's kind of like dipping, like far. It looks like it's like wobbling. And so he kind of slows his car down to like an idle, looks up, and he sees a 9-foot long creature that has like tan, leathery skin, piercing blue eyes, no hair, and it has wings, but not like the Mothman where they're organic wings that are part of his body. It has like a shoulder strap harness with a little computer on its chest with knobs and buttons. This is in 1957, mind you, before, like this sort of technology was household. But it looked kind of like, definitely like not human to this man. And he sees this thing and it's like having problems like flying, and it gets really low to the ground, like right above the pavement. It's like hovering there, all bouncy and weird. And the man steps out of his car, starts walking towards it. Then he gets paralyzed, like physically paralyzed. He can't move, talk, blink, or anything. And this creature like stares at him, finally twists the knob on his thing. All of a sudden, it can fly again and slowly drifts off and then zooms off. And the man becomes unparalyzed. And this was such a horrible experience for this man that he said he could not really sleep the rest of his life. He actually got a second job, like a night shift job. He's like, I might as well be making money because every time I sleep, all I see is this creature. And it troubled him to the day he died. And I love this case because I love flying wing humanoids that aren't the Mothman. I love the Mothman too. But the flying wing humanoid phenomenon is something that I think every state has. But this one is just so deeply weird and absurd and surreal. It's almost kind of comical. Not the trauma that happened to the man, but like I can't imagine seeing a 9-foot long creature that looked almost like, I guess, for lack of a better term, demonic or whatever. Like it looked like a monster.
Yeah.
With a with a piece of technology strapped to it. Like you really don't hear that often. That especially in the 1950s, where it had like a computer motherboard on its chest that was like operating it. So
I'm
it's like
seeing images of like Space Ghost. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, and that, I mean, it's just so weird. And I've actually been able to speak to he's pretty old now, but the investigator in Nebraska who took that case did a lot of follow up with this guy the rest of his life, and the guy like stuck to his story. He's like, it was traumatized. This is the worst thing that ever happened to me. It like kind of ruined his life, unfortunately. But I love the case. I love the story. I always tell it every time I do a lecture because it's just like it got a special place in my heart because it kind of ticks all the boxes. It's just so deeply strange and unusual, and it's weird. And there's not like a precedent for this kind of entity to have been seen. To my knowledge, I haven't discovered it. Now there's been things sort of similar since then, but prior to 1957, I can't find a case that is even close to being similar to that.
What a great story.
Yeah.
What a great story. Thank you. There again, it's like the technology is appropriate for the age, right?
Of course. You nailed it. You nailed it. Yeah. Or it's just right a little bit ahead of us.
Yeah, right on the cutting edge.
Like right when we're like figuring out how to go to the moon with crude rockets and whatnot, then we see the flying saucer, which looks like it could be like 100 years ahead of us, So it is, but that is a pattern that has emerged when you really research this stuff. It's like this stuff just changes, and it's changing right now, like as we speak. So well, it's gonna be hopefully like we'll be around to see what the next incarnation of the flying UFOs are.
Don't you get the sense that we're on the verge of another revelation? I think you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. I mean, it does. I mean, I guess, like with AI and technology and just kind of the state of the world and like the deterioration of the planet, like it feels like we're experiencing some sort of like shift. I'm not saying it's necessarily a good one, but I'm also not saying it's necessarily a bad one, but like it does feel like we're about ready to experience something new with high strangeness, a new manifestation. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I am too.
I choose to be excited about it.
Yeah. You mentioned that you were really fascinated with roads and you were delving into roads.
Yeah.
It reminded me of a story that I experienced with my wife. Do you want to hear it real quick?
Of course I do.
Okay. And it also has to do with orbs. But you're familiar, ghost lights, right? They're everywhere.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the
Okay.
Marfa lights in Texas. Come on.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those. I
Yeah.
haven't been out that far yet.
You got
But
to.
this is in Crossett, Arkansas. So, and the legend, I think this legend is not unique to the ghost light in Arkansas. I think this is in other places. It's the same story, which is interesting. The same fake stories come up to explain this phenomenon that's actually happening. Regardless of whether the story's true or not, something's happening.
Right.
But it's just kind of funny. It's the railroad, and the conductor, he lost his head and he's out there with the lantern looking for his head.
Sure.
Right? So the town is Crossett, Arkansas. People know about this, and you can drive out there. I've probably been out there 6 times, I would say, and just with random groups of friends, we'd be like, okay, let's drive out and see the light. So what you do is you drive down. It's by this old airport, like a crop dusting airport, and it's got the light though. The little beacon. That's not what we're seeing, but that people have tried to use that as an explanation, but it's definitely not that. That's just how you know where to turn. So you turn at the airport beacon. You go down this gravel road, and there once was a railroad track. Now it's been long since removed. It dead ends. You turn around, and you're just looking. Basically it's kind of like this hill. You can't see the highway that you've come in on. You're a few miles down the road. You flash your brights, and you wait. And most nights you'll just see this light kind of come bouncing down the road, swinging in lantern in hand fashion.
Whoa.
Right? And I've seen that almost every time you go, you see it, right?
What the?
And people just know about it. One of my storytellers from my first Halloween series was an older lady who talked about living there and having seen it. And so I've been there with different groups of friends, seen it almost every time. I went with my wife, just the two of us, when we were dating, and you turn off the car, you flash lights, the lights coming. Well, then the car, of course, wouldn't start. So it was like,
oh yeah, there we go.
We're freaking out. We got the car started. We're like, oh, never coming back here again. Except I did go back. My brother came into town, and I took him. And this was, I don't know, it was been my early 20s probably. So my brother and I are sitting there. He's 10 years older than me. He's my big brother, and we're the only ones there. A lot of times you go, there'll be other cars.
Right.
It's just like going to the drive-in or whatever. But this night, it was probably during the week. Nobody was there, just me and my brother. We see the light come, right? We did our lights, and he's like, my brother, he like is shocked that he's actually witnessing this.
Yeah.
He thought I was full of shit, I guess. I don't know. But he's like, so he gets out of the car, goes and sits on the hood and watches it, and it starts getting closer. Then he takes off running towards it. Okay?
I love it.
So he was in his mid-30s at that time. Like he doesn't care. He's got his family and kids, a job. He's like, I don't have time for this. I'm going to find out what this is.
I love it. Yeah.
He starts running towards it. And then what I see it do is, so it's the light. I see it kind of go in and then come out as a big black circle. Like,
whoa.
That's how it was. Just like the light went, and then it was just like this big black circle. And then it kind of like, he never caught it. He could never catch up to it. And then it just kind of like dissipated. That happened on a road in Crossett, Arkansas.
That is wonderful. Do you think do people still report that today?
They go, yeah.
Wait, how do you spell the name of the town again?
Crossett. I think it's Crosset, maybe 2 T's.
Crosset, Arkansas. I'm gonna look this up because
there's probably some YouTube footage. I don't know if Unexplained or Unsolved Mysteries went there. I feel like one of the shows went there at one point.
Well, there are, like I was mentioning earlier, the Marfa lights, the Brown Mountain lights, the Joplin lights. I mean, there is ones I'm not even mentioning, but like what is the deal with this stuff? Because like, even like the Joplin lights, I remember a university physics professor and a group of grad students went out for like multiple nights, I think weeks, and documented this stuff. Because at first their hypothesis was it was like headlights shining against a cloud and refracting down below, which can happen. But they absolutely ruled that out. They did with like because one of the guys was like a meteorologist, like PhD, and he's like, yeah, that's actually not what it was. And they were out there, and what they came across was like these like academics were like, we have no idea what's causing it, but we are seeing it. Like,
isn't that wonderful?
And this professor was like, the thing that really tripped me out is that it feels intelligently controlled. He's like, I don't know what, like, I'm not saying I believe there's intelligence, but it seems that way. And that's what a lot of people say with this life phenomenon. It's like, it seems that it interacts with you. Going back to what your thing is, there was an action and a reaction. Your brother runs towards it, then it behaves in a different way. Like, had it seemed consistent with the light swing, I'm like, well, that leads me to believe it could be some kind of natural mundane thing. But like, this thing changed and turned to a blacker than night circle. Dude, that is weird and absurd. Like, it's wonderful.
I'm thinking portal. I'm like, I'm thinking he's going to get sucked into the portal.
Careful, brother.
Yeah. Do not be like, you're crazy. But yeah,
I don't want to raise your family too.
Right. So yeah, that happened. And in the way the light interacts, there's no doubt in my mind or the minds of the people who have been there with me. That you're looking at it's not a reflection. Excuse me. And it's coming closer and it's going farther away. Like it won't allow you to get I don't know what, maybe it has a predetermined amount of space it's comfortable with, but
and I wonder if it's one of those things that actually is you're able to capture on video, or like, because sometimes light phenomenon, and this is even scientific, there's like, light spectrums, and sometimes photographs or video is unable to record certain kind of light spectral phenomenon. That's just actually science, that's not my woo theories about it.
Right.
But I do wonder if a lot of this stuff, when you try to document it, it behaves differently. Like, and that is like a form of intelligence, right? Like, if it's going to like a lot of times when people take instruments to like document a haunted dwelling or whatever, they'll get nothing. They go put the instruments away in their car. All of a sudden things start happening,
It's almost like there's a universal rule. Something's not allowing it. In certain cases, you'll see evidence of things, and you're always suspect because it's like, well, isn't that against the rules? But like when you, I'm really fascinated by the Catholic churches, and they're really like out there with this stuff right now. But exorcisms, they're all over the place now, broadcasting these exorcisms that they're doing. Mm-hmm. That's a horrifying and fascinating topic for me, but they don't record them.
No.
And I guess that's their explanation, is it's against the rules. But
well, I mean, I can see it too. It's also if I was the person going through possession, I'm like, man, maybe don't put this on YouTube, please.
If it happens to me, no. I'm not even gonna say it, but no, I'll just say think of the amount of people it could help. What it would do for the cause, right? If it's real, and you're able to just have that evidence, it would really, you'd think it would help. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's I don't know enough about the whole possession phenomenon. Like, it's just I don't know anyone. I've never talked to anyone who's been possessed, so it's like one of those things where I'm like, I don't know, maybe there's something to it. I don't have an opinion on it because like I don't know enough about it, to be honest. But I find it fascinating too. Like I would love to talk to someone from the Catholic Church for 5 days straight, about this.
So you're intrigued by that topic, possession?
I'm interested in anything that's unusual and weird. Yeah, I don't like the thing. I guess when it comes down to I guess the church's perception is that this is like demons from hell or something like that. I don't really believe in the hell. The word demon is just kind of this amorphous word that doesn't really have a definition, or it means something different to every culture. So it's like, I mean, the surety of the situation,
right,
kind of rubs me the wrong way. And I also think it's kind of harmful maybe to tell someone that you're possessed by a demon. I don't think that's a super like helpful thing to tell a person. So if these like people from the Catholic Church are saying like, well, you're possessed by a demon, I'm gonna have to come spray holy water on you. I'm like, I don't know. Go see a therapist first before you let a priest in your house to exorcise you. Please go see a therapist first. Like it would be my recommendation because I don't. I mean, like I don't know. Like how do they know? That's their best guess because that fits their framework. But there's no science behind that whatsoever.
Supposedly, you know, so they have a strong tradition of academic excellence or whatever, you know.
Absolutely, no doubt.
But they have their rigorous tests they put them through. Like, so I mean, if you look into it, you'll see these different priests out there talking about witnessing levitations, and you know, that's not mental illness.
Right. Well, and same with yogis and the Vedic tradition in the East. I mean, levitation's a big deal for yogis. Yeah.
Wouldn't you love to see that? Right?
Absolutely. I would love it. Are you kidding me? It'd be great.
What do you think about David Blaine? Is he like some kind of yogi, or is he?
No, I think he's a really talented magician. I think
I
think he's an illusionist. Yeah.
You do? You know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I get a vibe from him. I think he's like doing something real.
Man, you might be right. Yeah, that's my impression is that he's just very talented. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an impressive guy. What else were we going to talk about? Oh, we just need to schedule our band practice.
Yeah, exactly. I'll get the studio space booked, baby.
Can you just like give a shout out to different things that we can look into, stuff that you're working on, stuff that you've done?
Absolutely. Yeah. So you can find me on social media at Bergmaster5000 on all the socials and whatnot. I do, like you mentioned, have a podcast called Hi Strangeness. That's HI comma Strangeness, like I'm saying hello to it. Because that's what I am doing. But yeah, it's a show where I have kind of authors, researchers, experiencers. I'm also very interested in outsider culture, counterculture art. So I have some artists and countercultural stalwarts on there to talk about weird stuff. And yeah, so you can find me there. And then I guess in terms of my acting work, you head on over to IMDb if you want to see something I've been in. And yeah, I have a movie coming out called or that I'm in called God, what's it called? Who's Watching? I think that'll probably be out around Christmas time, but it's a horror movie. It's really good. I get to play like an office bully, like a real jerk, and usually I never get to do that, so it was fun to play an absolute horrible person.
Yeah, but that would be fun.
All
right, Who's Watching? I'm gonna be watching for that.
Yeah,
Steve, man, thank you so much.
Absolutely, Tanner. This has been a blast, bud.
It has
nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's great meeting you and talking with you. I hope we can chat again sometime.
Absolutely. And I would encourage you, one, I'm going to reiterate this.
Okay.
Make it your little side hobby to look into the Lubbock Lights and then also become the expert in the area you are. You, Tanner, can be the expert. And then if there's other experts around, great. Get together with them, compare notes, take them out for coffee. But you have a world of weirdness around you. So document it. If you're into this stuff, if that appeals to you, and it kind of, I'm getting the vibe that it does appeal to you.
Oh yeah.
But I'm telling you, the research, when you start doing this stuff, I'm telling you, you're going to like email me in 6 months from now and go, oh my God, I found so much stuff. This is so exciting. I don't know what to do with it. And like I'm telling you, it is, if you are into this stuff, there's a way you can participate and help the cause and push everything forward. And that is by taking your local area and turning over every stone, talking to people, researching online. Even if you do 2 hours a week, you'll come up with a lot of stuff and stuff that might be important to younger generations. Like these stories will go away if people don't document it. And that is a terrifying thought to me because at the end of the day, I believe there's this great quote by a German writer, and I can never remember her name, and I'm terribly embarrassed by it. But she said, the world is made of stories, not atoms. And I think that's true. So document these stories. Do not let them go away. The responsibility is on you. I'm holding you to it. So I'll check back in with you.
I love it.
You've uncovered.
That's great. If I get sucked into a portal, I'm going to come mess with your lights or something. I'm going to break your toaster.
Do.
I'm going to come dirty up your toaster.
I need a new one anyways, man. So yeah, do it. Full of toast crumbs.
All right. Hey, one last question. Is it too early? Is it too early to buy the candy corn and get the pumpkin stuff going? I'm an early Halloweener, but what about you?
Never. I mean, it's always Halloween in my world, my man. I choose to make it that way, but I also, it's not to worry. I mean, it's hot as heck here right now. It's like 100 degrees, so that's not very Halloween-esque. But the weather's gonna start cooling down. I'll be having a light jacket, and let me tell you, it's the best time to go to your state parks and look for weirdness, and just go where go out and everyone has access to rural areas. And while weird stuff does happen in cities, for me, it's just like the thing of like a pack a sack lunch and a good one at that. The sack lunch is important. And I'll go out for a day if I have a day off and just go explore. Get my get the boots dirty, like go out and look for weird stuff. So
That's
it's
a
fun.
day well spent. That's awesome.
It is. And it's a great thing to do over the Halloween season. It's like you can sit around and watch horror movies, which I love to do, but also go around and like try to make your own scary stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, make your own scary.
I'm working on it. I got the
buddy.
ambiance going. I just need some missions. So I'm gonna go find something to do. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, buddy. This is so fun.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.